Okay, so welcome to Milan, welcome to Italy, welcome to the IFRS Integrated Thinking and Reporting Conference. I am so proud that this conference is in Milan, is in Italy, is here, in a very important venue of the Fondazione Cariplo. And so, welcome to everybody of you, and I am really, I have to say, really thank to the IFRS Foundation for the choice of Milan, of Italy, and the choice of the O.I.B.R Foundation, O.I.B.R Foundation, that I represent here together with many other members as a partner for this important conference. We are happy. Every one of you knows who is IFRS Foundation, but perhaps some one of you may have some information about our foundation that's a part of here. It's a recognized foundation open to two participants and is a market-led organization open to all the stakeholders, inspired by an inclusive approach. We would like to have more and more members and not closed. We can participate to it. We can take a part in it. With an articulate governance able to guarantee the interest at all stake, and here we have many members of the board and very important people in the board of the O.I.B.R Foundation, for instance, the president of the Italian Standard Setter, the president of the Italian Professionals, the member, Davide Maggi, who is the president, who is a very important man in Italy, owing to his participation to the board of many foundations and banks, and many others. It's a not-profit entity with no commercial engagement, a body operating exclusively in the public interest, and is recognized by many organizations all around the world. You know that our foundation deals with issues related to the reporting and to the disclosure of information and measure, KPIs and so on. So we are so close to the topic that we are dealing today. And we promote studies, researches, guidelines, their dissemination, conference, seminars, a lot of them, webinars, seminar in presence, and also exchanges experiences. If we go through the webinars and seminars we have just a few months ago, from some months ago, in these 10 months before today, you can look them and you can see the presentation. They are all dealing the subject that is quite close to that we are dealing with. But we feel ourselves particularly close to the IFRS Foundation. And we would like to disseminate the culture, the standards, the mindset that the IFRS Foundation will promote all around the world. And here we have two examples of that, because we help the IFRS Foundation in translating into the Italian language, both the IR framework in 2021, and then also the snapshots of IFRS S1, IFRS S2. And this can be considered as much important. And this shows clearly where we are and what we want to do. And if you pass through some, not all, but some of our studies and guidances, you can see that many of them, you have a yellow line around them, are dealing about integrated reporting. So we have a long story about that, a long story. And I would like to mention just the first one, that we have integrated reporting focused on integrated thinking. An handbook of the change journey was the first one when we have our ancestor, that was N-I-B-R, that was previous from the O.I.B.R, N-I-B-R, and this was the first book about that, when nobody talked about that, but we were just talking about that. That is our story about that. Yes, we have a governance very important because of the people who are there. I don't mention them, I have also mentioned some of them, but I pass immediately to say a great thank to two people who work a lot to have this conference here today. Without them, this conference couldn't have this conference, and they are Stefano Zambon here, and Laura Girella, who is, where is, but he's here around in the air. Without Stefano Zambon and Laura Girella, we couldn't manage this conference. I ask you a great round of applause to them. So I have to say thanks so much to our sponsor. We have HEFAS, who contributed so much to the organization to sponsor this one. And also the Consiglio Nazionale di Dottori Commercialisti Esperti Contabili, the Italian profession in accounting, professionals in accounting. Here we have the president of that, who strongly supported this conference at the beginning, from the spring when we obtained the letter, the invitation letter by the IFRS Foundation. He said, yes, I will be there, I will support you. And also Andersen, thanks to Andersen, and to Sostenibilità Consulting, all together, they support this conference, and this conference happened. Of course, and I see Davide here in front of me, the Cariplo Foundation for hosting us in this marvelous venue. Not a marvelous day, because today we have not the weather typical of Italy. I'm sorry. But I think that when you came from your country, you say, oh, I will go in Italy, we have a great conference, and then we have sunshine, blue skies, good food, very good wine. So we can make you have two of them, good food and very good wine. For the sky and for the sunshine, come back later, and we will find them in another conference that we will organize. And then we have to say a great thanks to our speakers for taking time out of their busy, we know they are very busy schedules, to join us. And also to everyone is joining us. We have about 2,000 persons who asked us to be connected. So it's very huge, a very huge amount of people to the live stream, to the IFRS organization. So I would like to say you in the final moment some advice for people who are here. There is a Wi-Fi for the use in this venue. You can find the details in the networking areas, so if you need a Wi-Fi, you can find it. Breaks will be split over the ground and the first floor, so please do make use of the beautiful space here around we are in. Say hi to our sponsor, who you will find showcased and around the venue. And then there is an exhibition of integrated reports. Yes, there is an exhibition. This is something new that you cannot figure out before, to enjoy during the day. And I would like to say a great thanks to Mercurio MGP, that is here with us, who organized this exhibition. So it's all I have to say, so thanks again. Just to notice, I have to be, I have to introduce the British time into the Italian mindset. So I will be there, and when I come from the chair to here, it means that the time is over. And this is a signal that will show everybody that you have to stop your talking. So the speech is to our host, the marvelous Professor Davide Maggi, to say hello by the Cariplo Foundation. Thanks so much to every one of you.
Dear sirs, dear madams, it's with great pleasure that on behalf to the Board of Direction of Cariplo Foundation, I extend to you my warmest greetings and a hearty welcome to this conference dedicated to the theme Integrated Thinking and Reporting. Before delving into the topics that bring us together today, allow me to share the few words about Cariplo Foundation. It's one of Italy's leading philanthropic foundations, with a history that dates to the last century. Our mission is to support and promote projects and initiatives that can generate a positive and lasting impact on the communities and the territories in which we operate, through grants and collaboration with public, private, and third sector entities Cariplo Foundation is committed to fostering sustainable development, social cohesion, cultural enhancement, and environmental protection. Our objectives range from supporting scientific and technological research, social innovation, and the promotion of culture and the arts, to environmental protection and youth education. We work with the goal of creating shared value, placing people and their well-being at the center, and promoting initiatives that can concretely address the needs of communities. Our commitment is based on the belief that philanthropy should not only be a source of financial support, but also a driver of change and social innovation. In this context, integrated thinking and reporting are essential tools to guide organizations toward more transparent, responsible, and forward-looking management. Strengthening the quality and transparency of the information provided is more important today than ever. Integrated reporting goes beyond merely providing financial and non-financial data. It aims to create a coherent narrative that reflects the real impact on the enterprise within its operating context. This approach not only contributes to better understanding by stakeholders, but also to stronger trust in corporate dynamics. In conclusion, I hope that the work of this conference will stimulate deep reflection and offer practical insights for the future of integrated thinking and reporting. I am confident that today's discussions will help outline a new path to enhancing the quality and strengthening the value of our organizations. Thank you for your participation, and wish you all a fruitful and enriching conference. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Davide, again for your speech and for the venue. And now I have the pleasure to have here our Secretary General, Professor Stefano Zambon. This is preliminary speech and plenary speech, a blueprint for integrated reporting. Stefano, the place is for you.
Thank you so much. It's great to see all of you here, and just a special thank to all the connected people. There should be around 2,500 at the moment. So thanks, of course, to IFRS Foundation, Andreas and Emmanuel, of course, and the two vice chairs. We are particularly close to IFRS Foundation, and so it's a great honor for us to work, to collaborate today with you. So the title is a little bit ambitious, I understand. But let's try to, I was just thinking about, of course, in the last few weeks about this speech. I try to distinguish between what is working and what is relatively not working, in my view. Of course, I take all responsibility. If you have to shoot somebody, it's me. Clearly, we have a recognized, tested, and sound framework. The application is very wide. We know that there's about 2,500 companies around the world. So it's a remarkable number. Not only sustainability reporting, but it becomes more and more part of an annual report of more companies. I'm going to come back to this. Generates an advanced and sophisticated form of reporting. What I would like to call a tertium genus in Latin, so a third species. Because it's not financial exactly, it's not exactly sustainability, it's something sophisticated, advanced, a third species, or tertium genus, for those that like Latin. Clearly, it's holistic and multi-capital, we know all that. The focus on short, medium, long-term value creation, including sustainability in value creation terms, is working, clearly. It's a very fantastic feature. A framework that includes disclosures also on unaccounted intangibles. Andreas knows that I have a little bit maniac with that. There's a long discussion with Andreas. And of course, it stimulates systemic and integrated thinking within organizations, so changes also organizations, has this potential. And adaptable and flexible reporting form. That sometimes is not particularly stressed. Let me tell you a couple of words about the case of Italy, which I think is quite interesting. In Italy, the adoption has been quite, not wide, but significant, 50, 60 big organizations, but not only big organizations, driven by market forces. We have, of course, listed companies, as you expect, but also SMEs, micro companies, public sector entities, and non-profit organizations, which was not intended when the framework was elaborated. There are, of course, people here from the IIRC. For instance, this was the largest center for refugees in Europe. They adopted an integrated report, which is something unexpected. This day, football, soccer association adopts integrated reports. And even big research organizations like Human Technopole here in Milan, they have an integrated report 2024. So town halls, the commune of Bologna is one of the largest town halls in, of course, in Italy, after Rome, Milan, Naples. They adopt, you see, report integrato means integrated report, I think. And since 3 or 4 years, even a small town hall called Sasso Marconi, up here, Sasso Marconi adopts integrated reports. Small entities, they are not listed at all, far from being listed. A small water utility close to Ferrara is 30 million euros. And Way to Global, we're going to have the president, a lady president of Way to Global. There's less than 3 million turnover to produce integrated reports. So in a sense, this opens up quite interesting considerations beyond the usual, of course, listed companies type of things. Also, the location of integrated reports is quite interesting. In 2023, I made a little research. There are companies that transformed the management report into an integrated report and vice versa. So they have an integrated report instead of the management report. Some companies did even more, in particular, that small water utility, CADF. They also had, since 2023 already, management report, integrated report as management report, plus the incorporation by reference, just to respect the IFRS 1 and 2 requirements for sustainability information. So, as you know, CSRD, IFRS requires company to have one silo with all the sustainability information. And then, to escape the silos, sorry, the language probably is not appropriate, you use incorporation by reference. So one company already doing this, which I think is interesting, and some other companies do even worse or better, perhaps. They decided to call primary regulatory report package as integrated annual report. So there's a variety of different types of adoption in Italy. Now, some of the only relatively working aspects. Its position in between financial reporting and sustainability disclosure sometimes may hurt the understanding or the growth of integrated reports. Legal status, we all know in South Africa, of course, there's a King IV code that prescribes it for listed companies, but in all other places in the world, there's no requirement, legal requirement. It's only a framework, so to speak. Many people also told me, also in Europe, there's not a standard. It's governance. There's not a board for integrated reporting, of course, we know that. There's not a due process as yet. Of course, take this as a stimulating aspect. There are some frictions with the integrated reporting and some of the current regulations. Take Europe, for instance. It's very difficult, despite the incorporation by reference with my EFRAG friends, but it's difficult for companies to somehow make the two things compatible, integrated reports and respect, of course, of IFRS. So there are some frictions there that probably we can do something about it. And of course, the need to further develop some areas. Integrated thinking, clearly there's a potential. And of course, sorry, once again, here we go, intangible capitals. In this respect, the relational, intellectual, human capital in integrated reports clearly calls for intangibles reporting and measurement. In this respect, allow me please to signal to you a recently launched endeavor called the Strategic Intangibles Initiative. It's just a discussion forum, basically, that is open and inclusive, that would like to help, standard setters, basically, to have more information, more possible solutions. These are the current membership, Wiki, EFAS, Japanese Ministry METI, Japanese Cabinet Office, IFVI, Value Balancing Alliance, Accounting Standards Committee of Germany, the Australian Accounting Standards Board, the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, GRI, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the O.I.B.R. Foundation, and in a few days we should have also WIPO, the Intellectual Property Office of the United Nations, as an observer. We think that this might be an interesting initiative and proposal for the near future. So I just would like to conclude with 10 ideas for the future of integrated reporting. Take it as you like. They come from experience, logic, but also a little bit from the heart. So clearly, we think that we should focus on IR, that is, as an existing, well-working stepping stone to a unitary corporate reporting. I think that should be the starting point. And this needs also an agreed roadmap for the future. We should magnify the links between integrated reporting and financial and sustainability reporting standards. Integrated reports need some content, of course. And of course, IFRS 1 and 2 can be, of course, very useful, but not only. There are also other possibilities, also financial accounting. Natural capital, financial capital require, call for standards, in a sense. Why we should perhaps exploit the natural interrelations between integrated report and management commentary, even though, I'm sorry, I have my own position, without confusing the two. In a sense, there might be some liaison dangereuse creating confusion. In my view, we should we could show how a company that uses both management commentary and integrated report, or one of them, can embed S1 and S2, but without making confusion and not too much overlapping, because otherwise I think we will risk losing a little bit the identity of the two. Just a suggestion for trustees, the IFRS constitution, the next revision, could incorporate integrated reporting in explicit basis. And of course, the governance of integrated reporting is very important. As a suggestion, just to launch a message to the market, especially in Europe, we will need that. The approval, commitment, and support by the entire two boards will be, I think, a useful thing for, if possible, for the growth of integrated reporting. Of course, we can extend another idea, the sample database, the dedicated staff, the entity cases to better support companies. Similar vein, not the same, of course, but similar vein to the recent illustrative example of sustainability report developed by the Chartered Accountants of Singapore, that was based on GRI in that case and IFRS, sustainability standards. So something similar probably can be done also for integrated report. Systematic bridging with the progressive academic community. I think academic community can help in this respect with thought-driven and evidence-based research. We can facilitate the assurance of integrated report, which is still not clear. Of course, we have IAASB representative here, but now the ISA 5000 that's just been approved can be, a turning point. But I think we need to work on that to make sure that the integrated report is, of course, included in this. We can, of course, develop producing further compelling evidence on the role of integrated thinking for company value creation. I think that it will be a very interesting avenue also for the future. And finally, we could encouraging and leveraging the contribution of and the push from the IR communities. Investors, financial analysts, like, as far as after we're going to have the FS president of the European financial analysts, preparers, like integrated report. I think we should start from this important element that there's an acceptance in the market of integrated reports. And it's always surprising that in the last 10 years, I have here part of the original members of the IIRC, there's always been incredible push from various countries. Still people that we started together in 2013, 2014, or even before, they're still here. So there must be something there. So just in closing, thinking that integrated report is a third species of tertium genus, I was thinking about this sentence by Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable to a changing environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stefano, for this provoking entrance and very important speech. And now we have the keynote address of Emmanuel Faber, that everybody knows as Chair of International Sustainability Standard Board. Please, Emmanuel, for you.
Well, it's great to be with you all this morning, and to our audience virtually as well. Grazie mille to Alessandro, David, and of course you, Stefano, for the invitation, the organization, and the invigorating introduction to the conference today. I would like to reflect on the fact that integrated reporting, integrated thinking, I think is a journey. And I can't speak about other people's journey, I can speak about my journey. So I'll be briefly reflecting on the past, the present, and the future of integrated reporting as I have seen it over a number of years. The past starts for me with you, actually, some of you in this room and your organizations, when in 2009, as I was the Vice Chair and COO of Danone, we decided to close down the sustainability department so that it would become everyone's responsibility in the company, and everyone's responsibility in the company meant incentives that would match that talk in the walk. And so as the Vice Chair and CEO of the company, the level of bonus I would get every year for the EBIT margin target reach and the decarbonation of our supply chains would be the same amount of money in my pocket. And that was the same for 15,000 managers and team leaders around the world. So in a way, the first annual report of Danone in 2009 was our vision of what an integrated reporting could be. It was a great pleasure a year after to receive a call from GRI, who spoke to us in 2010 about the perspective of creating integrated reporting framework, and called us to be a pilot, and called on us to potentially call other colleagues in the industry and beyond to also pilot the integrated reporting framework. So we did that with, I think, about 100 companies for 3 years, till 2014, when we forcefully decided, I became CEO of the company at that point in time, to go into deep integrated thinking and thereby integrated reporting as well. Fast forward 4 years, there was a Harvard Business School case about what would have happened if Danone had not gone for the choice of integrated reporting. So it was interesting that we were thriving in the community, also building some academic bridges around the community with our own particular journey. And then in 21, when I was at COP26 in Glasgow, and I saw this big announcement in the plenary room of the COP for the creation of ISSB, I realized that something that had been a dream for like 10 or 15 years was going to happen. Maybe integrated thinking and integrated reporting would become part of the mainstream. I was asked if I would be prepared to chair this initiative with a lot of others, because that's a collective initiative, and I jumped. So that's the past for me. And I would like to say that the present that I'm going to speak about for 5 minutes, of where the IFRS Foundation and certainly ISSB is when it comes to integrated thinking and integrated reporting, I think bears the fruit of all the efforts in this room, way beyond of the collective of the integrated reporting family around the world and the pioneers. Why does ISSB exist? It exists to provide useful information to investors about sustainability-related risks and opportunities. That definition is paragraph 1 of IFRS S1. Why is it important? Because information for investors on those topics is important because the capacity of an entity to create and generate cash flows over the short, mid, and long terms is inextricably linked to its relationship with its stakeholders, civil society, the economy, and the environment in which it operates. And as such, the entity and it forms an interdependent ecosystem with the parties with which it and the environment in which it operates. That is the answer that paragraph 2 of IFRS S1 is bringing to the question, why is it important to report material information on sustainability risk and opportunities? The only answer that we bring is because the entity is inextricably linked with its ecosystem. So the answer is because of integrated thinking. Fundamentally, we have rooted through this decision integrated thinking at the very, very core of what we are doing. It didn't happen by chance. Of course, there was the consolidation of the VRF and the VRF into IFRS. For me, it really started one day when I received an email. I think that was October or November 22. We were redeliberating heavily on S1 and S2. And that came from Laura Girella. Hi, I'm Laura Girella. You probably don't know me. We haven't met yet. We were busy and multi-location. I'm in your interoperability team, working with EFRAG and the team, etc. I happen to be also a teacher, Next time you come for Brussels in the next meeting, maybe we can have coffee. And we had a coffee. And it was a long coffee. And I discovered my discussion with Laura, how powerful S1 could be in order to reflect that deep personal thinking that the foundation had embraced and the trustees had embraced of how integrated thinking and reporting could be extremely useful for investors to allocate capital towards more resilient business models. So it's always a journey, it's always collective, it's always part of the family. Another thing that you may not have seen yet is, as Stefano was mentioning, how the two boards work together. We published a paper, our staff of ISSB published a paper a few days ago that will be discussed next week during our board week about the management commentary of our sister board, where we are saying that subject to the ISB finalizing its deliberation on management commentary, subject to the requirements of information in the management commentary, we may believe that's the recommendation of the staff, at least we'll see what the board has to say about this, that management commentary is a place where our information should be. If our information should be there, it means integrated thinking is going to be there too. So there is an ongoing organic work that progresses the integrated thinking into our joint work at the IFRS Foundation. It may be not very visible, but it is there, and that's why I highlighted those two very detailed topics, but that makes a huge difference potentially. It makes a huge difference potentially because today that is an opportunity for your work, since decades for some of you, to be carried into half of the global economy. 25 jurisdictions have started already their journey towards the adoption or the use of the ISSB standards, with S1 at the core. The Basel Committee has chosen to look at S2, which is based on S1 for bank supervision. The IP-SASB, as you know, has also elected to do the same for their climate disclosures. And so there is a systemic effect in the fact that integrated reporting framework was brought as part of the consolidation of ISSB and beyond ISSB as part of the IFRS Foundation. So that is the present, as far as I'm concerned. Let's speak briefly, and I will close with that, about the future. I think in collective journeys, as the one I just described, there are moments when you think about the theories of change that are about divergence and convergence, divergence and convergence. It's hard to do both at the same time. I guess you understand that the theory of change of why the trustees and the governance of the IRCC have chosen to consolidate with VRF and then chosen to consolidate within the IFRS Foundation is because there was a need for convergence. The convergence is maybe that so many jurisdictions mandate the use of requirements that embark integrated thinking that then allows and makes relevant integrated reporting. Let me say one thing very clearly. Integrated reporting without integrated thinking is not worth much. Nothing. It's nothing. So I'm not interested in the packaging. I'm interested in the substance at this stage. And we can, I'll say just a word about this while I'll close. So convergence and divergence. I have been part of this community for 10 years and more. And I know when I meet with people in Rome, in Belém, in South Africa, etc., the passion and the creativity and the divergence of views that grows diversity of views that we embark. I think it's a richness. Today, we are embarked on a convergence trajectory for the next 2 to 3 years. I think the best way you can serve the mission that you've set for yourselves, collectively, individually, is to help us support the proper implementation, application, globalization of IFRS S1. This is where, ultimately, we will make a difference. It doesn't mean that this needs to become a uniform thinking here. I don't think it will ever become, and I don't think that'll be good. But it's a matter of where you put your priorities. In another way, ensure that your convergence is more visible than your divergences. Ensure that your alignment on priorities with us is more visible than the misalignment. Because misalignment today, I can tell you, is creating questions as to the relevance of the community's work and whether what we provide for, having embarked integrated thinking, is actually relevant for regulators. We should together ensure that we go, and one by one in jurisdictions, when this is the case, we have a same language. That's a language that helps them converge and say, oh yeah, there is one solution. Not yes, but there are doubts, and why not, and da-da, and yeah. All of this is important work. That has been the case for a long time. It will continue. I simply say, ensure that there is a vision that this incredible collective is being seen as cohesive, diverse, of course, but cohesive, and coordinated as much as possible with our work. The risk, if we do not coordinate enough, is that we hurt the community because we've got this hopefully big machine, you know, pushing, and if you're on the way and we don't pay attention, we will hurt the community. So we need to be coordinated. And on the other side, you can derail the way the machine works if on certain themes, moments, you engage in a way that is not providing support to the implementation of S1 and S2. So I'm really hoping that with keeping all this vibrant diversity, you also embark the fact that the community is now counting on us. I took that responsibility on behalf of all of us here of spending 3 and now another 3 years of my life to ensure that with the incredible team of ISSB and our colleagues at the IFRS Foundation, we are going to roll this out in the whole world. And just let me then finish by saying that I know that there are conversations that are, as I think Stefano showed for Italy, and you mentioned South Africa, and there would be Australia. There are areas and moments and you know, communities, local communities of IR that have diverse views. The choice of materiality and the primacy in our work on financial materiality is a choice that has been made for the IR framework. It doesn't mean that impact materiality, multi-stakeholder reporting is not important. And as you know, we have this groundbreaking strategic agreement with GRI now to provide a seamless solution for multi-stakeholder reporting to those companies or those regulators that want to have that approach. But that's an important point, and it might be divisive, but that is an important point of convergence. Location, that was discussed also briefly by Stefano, is another one. I'm personally concerned about the situation here in Europe, that you know, the ESRS, and you said, Stefano, you used this word of escaping the silo. I don't think you should, you should feel sorry or apologize for this. It's the truth. I do have a problem, personally, with that silo, and it's a fact here. So how can we work together to try to find solutions? Because, of course, Europe has, as everywhere else in the world, a need for the incredible work that we do. And so I was happy, in particular, to mention this here in Milan, where there is a super vibrant community of IR for Europe, and I really look forward to continue to work with all of you. Enjoy the conference.
Thanks, Emmanuel, for this speech and also for all the subjects that you touched, that from the contents to governance problems that are very important, related also to what Stefano said before. And now, to have the convergent trajectory that you quote before, we have to speak about, we have a panel discussion using IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 to drive high-quality integrated reporting. The moderator will be Laura Girella, Technical Specialist of Integrated Reporting IFRS Foundation, and also Associate Professor of Accounting at the University of Modena Reggio Emilia. We are proud to have it in Italy. And the panelists are Sue Lloyd, Vice Chair of ISSB, Veronica Poole, Vice Chair Deloitte UK and Deloitte Global IFRS and Corporate Reporting Leader, and Bruce Thomas, Finance Executive Reporting NetBank. So you are pleased to have them here to have this panel.
Thank you so much. Alessandro, it's a real pleasure and honor to be moderating this panel, which is coming right after Emmanuel's speech. So I'm gonna take the baton from Emmanuel and say a few words before going into our discussion. As Emmanuel was mentioning, IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 have drawn on the IR framework. And this is when it comes to paragraph 2, the reference to sustainability and the definition of sustainability. When it refers to connected information, it reminds of the concept of connectivity in the IR framework, and also when it comes to resources and relationships that we used to refer to in the IR framework as the capitals. It is also, as Emmanuel was pointing out, the IR framework remains a possible location for IFRS S1 and S2 disclosures. So what it is becoming really important is to perceive the IR framework and IFRS S1 and S2 disclosure not as either or, but a complementary tool for corporate reporting and the description and the definition of value creation over time. So if with that in mind, I can start from you, Sue, and ask you, from a standard setting perspective, what have been the reason to rely on the IA framework in drafting IFRS S1 and S2? And also, where do you see the value for integrated reporters to adopt IFRS S1 and S2 disclosures?
Thank you, Laura, and great to be here. A bit daunting being on a panel with you talking about integrated reporting framework. I'll take the challenge. So Emmanuel stole a bit of my thunder. One of the problems working with Emmanuel is you don't always know exactly what he's going to say, but I'll repeat it for emphasis anyway. So what was the relevance of the IR framework? I think when you pick up S1 and also S2, you can really see the integrated reporting bones there. And right from the start, when we were working on S1 and S2 back in the prototype and the exposure draft days, we already had the bones of the IR framework there, which was super, super important, because there's a couple of key things that we're trying to do that are concepts that are in the integrated reporting, and we grabbed them and ran with them. So one of them is the focus on governance. So that's in the TCFD recommendations as well. But this notion that talking about governance and understanding the governance of sustainability risks and opportunities is really at the heart of S1 and S2, and that's borrowed very heavily from the integrated reporting framework. Another really important thing that comes to us from the integrated reporting framework, and it was right there from the start in the proposals, was this idea of connections. The idea that we're not talking about this disparate reporting, but we need to be able to understand the relationships between different parts of the report. So this idea that you need to be able to understand what we're saying about sustainability risks and opportunities and what's happening in the financial statements, that relationship should be clear and connections should be explained. That was also something that we borrowed from the integrated reporting framework, and that's really at the heart of the ISSB. If you think about previous sustainability reporting, one of the things that's really special about what we're doing is this idea that it's part of this reporting package that includes the financial statements, and we borrowed that from the integrated reporting framework. But I think the last bit is perhaps the most important piece, and this is where Emmanuel stole my thunder a little bit. If you go back and you look at the exposure draft of what is now IFRS S1, the connection to this idea of the capitals and value creation in the integrated reporting framework, which is now front and centre in S1, wasn't visible. And that's where we really doubled down on the integrated reporting framework in the redeliberations. And it's because when we put the exposure draft out, we had this notion of enterprise value. People didn't understand what enterprise value meant. They thought we were talking about share price. They thought that it meant that it was a very, market-focused thing. And they were really missing understanding what was at the heart of the drivers of value that we were trying to articulate, and really struggling clearly to understand these interactions with the ecosystem that Emmanuel was talking about before. And it meant that people thought that we didn't care about impacts at all. And that's where the IR framework was the aha moment. And I didn't realise the extent to which you'd influenced my boss, so that's good to know. But it's that's what we really grabbed, and that's what's so fundamental in S1, and why it's so fundamental to say that integrated thinking in the IR framework is right there in the middle, because you can't understand what the ISSB standards are about, what our financial materiality focus is, unless you understand this notion of value creation that we took from the IR framework. And so it's really fundamental in there, and soon we're going to publish some materiality educational materials that I think are going to really reinforce that for our stakeholders. But really quickly to your question, I think what that means is that people who understand the IR framework are incredibly, incredibly well positioned to do a great job applying S1 and S2, because they've got a head start on understanding these concepts over and above other people. But what we do, to build on a comment that Stefano made in his tee-up, is take this from a framework to a standard, more specificity in language, bringing the regulatory system with it, and bringing some specificity around what the particular disclosures might be. And so I think that that's where we build on the IR framework, and where S1 and S2 can complement the integrated reporting, because there's more specificity about the disclosures, which helps investors, helps companies understand what to disclose, and that's where that really important link is. And it's all founded on integrated thinking as well, which is where Emmanuel emphasized as well. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And if we can just build on that, Bruce, because as Sue was mentioning, integrated reporters, I have already a well-suited architecture to include and embed also IFRS S1 and S2 disclosure. What has been your experience in starting to, doing an integrated report? You're coming from a very well-known integrated report in South Africa and internationally, but also keeping an eye on IFRS S1 and S2 to see how they can fit. Can you let us know and tell us a little bit more about the benefits and possible challenges that you have been encountering in doing that?
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, it's a great question. And we at Nedbank, we've started on a journey to develop a roadmap to adopt the standards. And we've, in starting that process, have been very deliberate to build on our integrated reporting base. I think because, as Sue mentioned, I mean, that it's so hardwired into the pillars of what's in the ISSB standards. I mean, really those governance, strategy, risk management, metrics and targets pillars are extremely useful for the way that you think about the business and value creation, and really has become hardwired in through our integrated reporting process and how we talk to our board and how we talk to investors. So that's been the biggest benefit we've seen so far, that you keep reminding people when we're having conversations, but we already do this, we already have got a start, and we need to build on that, not create something new. The other key benefit that we really found that took time to develop in our integrated reporting journey was that sort of integrated thinking, and we call it our core team, and it's a multidisciplinary group of individuals across the business, different specialisms, coming together and trying to ensure that we hold that golden thread. It's still a challenge, that it's very easy to report how I see the business rather than how investors see me. So that still it remains a challenge, but I would challenge anyone who's looking at either integrated reporting or the ISSB standards, try find that core team. And it needs to not be just group functions, it needs to be people in the business that are responsible for managing the value creation process. So I wouldn't say the other challenge we know from integrated reporting that I think the ISSB standards are picking up on is processes and controls around many of the data points that are used on these extremely important material areas of your business are not as strong as other areas of the business. So that's certainly been a challenge, and I think something that everyone's got to watch out for as they're implementing it. How do you bring those processes and controls along?
Thanks a lot, Bruce. Veronica, you referred to specificity in responding to Stefano. So from your viewpoint, how can IFRS S1 and S2 add more specificity, especially to encourage comparable and consistent disclosures?
Well, before I go there to the specificity, I think one point worth re-emphasizing is the point where Emmanuel started, which is integrated thinking. And I think fundamentally, integrated reporting is an output of integrated thinking within an organization. And that is the fundamental thing that is going to be required for a company to adopt S1 and S2 successfully. And I think that's what we absolutely need to reflect on. The fact that S1 and S2 already embed the same principles as we had both from Emmanuel and from Sue. They embed similar principles similar language, similar approach to materiality, similar holistic view of value drivers of the organization, of risk. However, S1 and S2 cannot be implemented unless you have adopted that thinking across the organization. And that, to me, is absolutely critical. That is embedding consideration of those broader factors of sustainability and broader factors into the DNA of the business. All the way from your line managers, you know, in the sales function, selling goods to their customers, all the way to the people managing the procurement function, all the way to those charged with governance, the incentives within the organization, the organizational behaviors, culture, KPIs, strategy, all of that is required in order to be able to tell a holistic story. And it's telling that holistic story of value creation, of value drivers and risk. That's what's underpinning S1, and that's what's underpinning integrated reporting. Specificity. So yes, so another critical point about integrated reporting, of course, is connectivity. And that's where some of the specificity now starts feeding through. So integrated reporting embeds the principle of connectivity. Wonderful. But how do you actually do it in practice? Connected behaviors, connected decisions, for sure. Connected approach to risk management, for sure. But how do you do it when you start telling the story? And historically, what we have seen with a lot of integrated reports, you have an excellent integrated narrative in the front that tells this holistic story of the business model, of strategy, of everything else. But there's very little linkage into the actual performance of the business. And the performance had been historically very much taken as one-dimensional performance. And that just defies every concept of business management. Because fundamentally, if you think about the core driver of performance within a business and the way I'm managing performance, is a key performance indicator, right? So it's not one-dimensional. Business never looks at performance through just financial results. And so that disconnect that we had was always troubling. And we've seen it play out. In fact, we've seen it play out with climate accounting significantly over the last few years, where investors said, we cannot tell the connection between the front and the back. All your commitments, all your promises, all your decarbonization journey, all that strategy, how does that feed into the financial performance? That's one good example where we had the investor voice, the regulator voice, loud and clear, and we had this disconnection. Now what, of course, S1 and S2 embed very clearly is the need for connectivity, not only in your narrative around how you narrate governance, strategy, KPIs, etc., but it is about how do you then translate that into the actual results, numbers today for the period that's just gone, but also, of course, into what are the future impacts, which line items in your balance sheet, in your P&L are going to take the hit, how that performance is going to be affected. So ultimately talking about more specificity to explaining that fundamental business resilience and the viability of business models. So I think that's at the heart of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Veronica, for this. And Rose, actually, Veronica just mentioned the role of integrated thinking. Can you tell us a little bit more? And we're going to have a dedicated panel on this later on. But from your viewpoint, how can integrated thinking help embedding and implementing IFRS S1 and S2 disclosure, also not to perceive them just as a compliance exercise?
Thanks, Laura. I think where Emmanuel started was right, that this is everyone in the organization's responsibility. And at its heart, integrated thinking leans heavily into that idea of a shared responsibility. But to make that happen, you need, at a governance level, very strong voices at the board, at your executive committees that buy into that narrative that this is a shared responsibility that we all have. And once you get there, you unlock that ability to think across multiple issues at the same time, because you now are not just concerned about your own discipline, you are concerned about the interconnectedness between the various key performance indicators, the various parts of the performance of the business. So my key sort of thing to ensure this is not a compliance exercise is that narrative from the leaders of the firm is critical. So you have to have that. Then from the people who are implementing, make sure that you look at it from an outside-in lens as much as possible. Try to think about it. What is it that the questions investors are asking, what are they trying to understand? Because it will also help us better articulate internally what is our purpose, what is our strategy, what are the risks and opportunities that we're facing. So it really becomes about being able to, we should reward those who are able to think outside of their discipline as much as what their core discipline is. And then the last thing really is to link this to your strategic planning process. So that's not a separate process to the reporting. I think in the first early days of integrated reporting, we did find that the reporting led some of these activities, but as we started to feed that back into the business, it became critical that the practices, particularly around materiality, what are investors requiring of us, got embedded into the strategic planning process. Because that's the one time that the organization sits back and says, where are we going? Are we on track? And really challenges itself outside of the day-to-day management and brings that integrated thinking really to the fore. So those would be my key sort of takeaways around leadership, that culture of how you implement and bringing it into your strategic planning process.
Thank you, Bruce. Talking about discipline, Veronica, what is the role that you think IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 play in supporting assurance, and what are the steps that companies should take in order to establish that reporting discipline?
So assurance, a very interesting question, because again and again I hear this comment either that we should include everything in the financial statement so that it can be audited, or somehow we need to address this whole question of assurance quite radically. So I think it is a very topical conversation. And to me, I think what the IFRS standards bring fundamentally is the preconditions that are necessary for assurance. So if you look to the auditing and assurance literatures, there are some very clever words that explain the whole concept that you need to have standards, reporting standards that support the reporting objective, and those reporting standards form the criteria for the assurance provider, a suitable criteria for assurance providers then to undertake that exercise of challenging the management and those charged with governance as to how they fulfilled the objective of reporting. So what do we see with the IFRS, the world we all know, the world of financial reporting? We absolutely see the standards that support the fair presentation of the financial performance of the entity, right? So that's what we are portraying, and this is what the standards then support. And they provide a suitable criteria for reasonable assurance to be delivered on financial performance. Now, that's what the S1 and S2 bring. First of all, first and foremost in technical speak, in auditing and assurance speak, they bring a framework that creates a suitable criteria for assurance. It's a prerequisite of a system for corporate reporting. So you need to have standards for assurance, you need to have standards for reporting. There are many other elements to your corporate reporting system, and they include, of course, your governance within the company, the right controls, the right environment that needs to be created there. They include the right education across the whole ecosystem. They, of course, include the monitoring and enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. So many different elements to a comprehensive corporate reporting ecosystem, but you start with those standards. That's one. But the second thing, which is probably the most critical to the conversation around integrated thinking and integrated reporting, what S1 and S2 bring is the specificities that you asked me first time around. They bring the right specificities that enable comparability between companies, within the company, year to year, etc. They bring the rigor, the robust discipline, the robust framework for the actual reporting process that the company needs to put in place. And so we just had Bruce talk about what Ned had traveled through, the Ned Bank had traveled through. And it's exactly that journey. It's about putting the right reporting process in place that now addresses not only the financial reporting aspects, but addresses the holistic picture of business performance. Now, easier said than done. Those who traveled integrated reporting journey and tried to put this in place have found it quite challenging. Because as we know, in order to understand risks and opportunities holistically, and that's emphasized in S1 and S2, we're looking at drivers of value and risk holistically. And in order to understand those, we need to look across the value chain. We need to apply, not only here and now vision, but the vision of what may happen over time. And to capture that variety, the breadth of data, to have the robust discipline for reporting process, to have the right internal controls, to have the right governance, those are all prerequisites for assurance. They are preconditions for assurance. And guess what? S1 and S2 effectively enable it by bringing the right discipline for that reporting process. Because otherwise, well, guess what we have seen? We all know about this. The problem with sustainability reporting to date, and with many integrated reports, unfortunately, is the fact that more often than not, are seen as marketing document. And, fundamentally, that information, which is business critical information, as we said, these are the real drivers of value and risk today. 90% of the value of the company, normally, these days, in the modern world, is all dependent directly on all of those drivers of value and risk. And yet, all of those factors today, we don't have trust in that information. The ecosystem doesn't have trust. The information is absolutely tarnished with accusations of greenwashing, and that's not good for the ecosystem because we're effectively discarding and not factoring into valuations some of the most critical KPIs that will drive that value and will show the business resilience and viability. So from an assurance provider, and this is not intended as a self-service because I come from an audit firm, but if you want high-quality assurance, you do reasonable assurance cover to cover across the holistic picture of the business performance. You do it across the robust systems that the company has put in place, and that's how you build trust in that information. So I think that's where S1 and S2 really play an important role, bringing the right discipline to enable some of that.
Thank you so much for this, Veronica. Sue, if I can come back to you, also reflecting on what Bruce and Veronica just said, but any kind of key reflection, key messages that you would like to convey also to our IR communities and stakeholders more broadly?
Yes, perhaps first reflecting on some of the comments that Bruce and Veronica have made, which I think are really reinforcing something which I think is at the heart of all of this, is the importance of integrated thinking and how I certainly don't want our standards, S1 and S2, or the IR framework to be used as a reporting exercise. I really hope that when people pick up our ISSB standards and the integrated reporting framework, that they're thinking about value creation and how they're managing their business, and it's prompting questions. Most of the people I'm talking to here probably are very, very deeply into the sort of ethos of the integrated reporting framework and integrated thinking, but many of the people that we're talking to now are really new to this whole journey that we're on here. And I think for some companies, when they pick up S1 and S2 and the integrated reporting framework and integrated thinking, it's encouraging them to think about things that they haven't thought about before. And what's really striking to me, I talk to a lot of companies around the world now about our standards and the reporting changes that are coming. And what's really striking is the number of companies who say to me how useful the process has been because it's helped them really dig into what risks and opportunities there are that they should be managing, that maybe they weren't managing and that they hadn't identified and that they need to think more deeply about. And so those people are saying, actually, this has been really useful for us to really dig into things that we haven't thought through perhaps as thoroughly as we should have before. You know, my physical climate risks, where are they? What's happening in my supply chain? That's valuable for the business, to create value for your business and to have a sustainable business in the long term. And in so doing, you can report on it, but it's not because of the reporting, it's around the other way. And I really hope that people see the opportunity of that, and I think both Veronica and Bruce really emphasise that. And that's not easy. It means you need to bring different people into the room than perhaps have been together before, and learn from each other. The other thing I find really interesting when I talk to companies is the number of companies that immediately start panicking about metrics and targets. And I get that, because what they're looking at looks hard and it's new and people are really worried about things like measuring scope 3. I really encourage people to sort of slow down and say, tell me what you're thinking about when you think about physical climate risk. Tell me your story. And they're very good at telling me the story about what they've had to trade off, what they're thinking about, what the consequences are of their supply chains. I said, that's the first thing to start with. Think about that and tell that story. How are you governing that? What's your strategy? What's your risk management? Then we can talk about the metrics and targets, but don't start with the metrics and targets. And I think that if people picked up the integrated reporting framework and read that, and integrated thinking, and read those alongside S1 and S2, they're much better placed to apply the ISSB standards as well. So I really see them as being complementary. And that, I think the comments today really reinforce that, and that's something I really feel passionately about. This isn't a reporting process for the sake of it. The other thing I think which is really valuable, which Veronica highlighted in particular at the end there, is I think one of the great things that S1 and S2 do to complement the great things about integrated reporting is bringing enhancing the robustness and the usefulness of the information and the confidence in the information, so that all of that energy and effort and passion that goes into preparing this reporting results in information that's actually being used in the market to affect change. The more robust, the more people feel confident that this is, you know, solid and it's not just marketing, the more people will use the information. And so I think there's a real benefit for the system of the support that the specificity of S1 and S2 bring to build on the concepts that were already there. We've been lucky enough to inherit from the IR framework and integrated thinking.
Thank you so much for that. Let's see whether there are questions, curiosity from the audience. Everyone been shy today. There is a question here, second row. Just a minute, mic is coming.
So this is for you, Bruce. Very interesting how you're trying to operationalize integrated thinking, integrated reporting into NetBank. How do your management information and decision-making systems and processes support that within the organization?
Yeah, so we've tried, as far as possible, the information that we are including on our integrated report is embedded into what we report to our board, as well as our executive teams. To get that right, I think at times the management information systems have been the thing that's taken the longest to mature. We're finding, as we are starting to have discussions around how do we really embed the ISSB standards, integrated reporting, and even our own purpose into what we do as an organization, that we've needed to invest more into our management information systems. But it has been a tough journey because typically they're not in a unified system. So again, you need that team of people from across the organization and discipline to pull together and to plot a way forward. I think there must be huge value to getting a single view in one place, which currently sits in 10 to 20 different systems at the moment. So, yeah, I don't think we're there yet. I think there are very few organizations who are there yet, but it's probably one of those journeys that you just need to start. If you don't start, you're not going to see any of the benefits.
Thank you very much.
Any other? There is a question from the lady there. And then we have another one there after.
Thank you. It's been absolutely wonderful listening to your comments about moving away from the compliance-driven approach and trying to put integrated thinking as first and foremost. I'm from Australia, and we are mandating a reporting aligned with S2 from next year for the largest Australian companies. What I observe is, unfortunately, far too much focus on reporting and not enough focus on integrated thinking. My experience is that that will come in time once that reporting has been practiced for a few years. But my question is, how can this community and the ISSB take steps to try and make that messaging clearer and more urgent so that companies understand that the benefits of using S2 and also S1 exceed a simple output, which is a report at the end of the financial year?
Who's going? Veronica, would you like?
Yeah, very, very happy to comment. Having been part of the integrated reporting community and worked with IFRS, with the companies that really do practice, integrated thinking, embed and share their experience. So I think the core messaging has to be always starting from integrated thinking, and the fact that if you want to implement S1 and S2 robustly and successfully, then you need to go to those principles of integrated thinking. So from my point of view, it's not just talking about the benefits, it's also talking about the preconditions. And in Australia, you're also bringing in assurance requirements, and so fundamentally, I think for companies to get ready, they will have to put the robust discipline. That's where the message starts. S1 and S2 give you the framework for a robust discipline. So they are essential prerequisites. They're not just a burden, because they support the narrative, the credibility of your narrative, and they support that, not only holistic storytelling, but building trust in that information. That's where the benefit lies. Because once you start understanding, and when I work a lot with WEF companies, and World Economic Forum, the largest businesses, not necessarily the thinking applied by each and every company, but the largest businesses of the world. If you talk to a CEO, the CEO of a business never has a problem understanding how much value is captured in those broader factors, and the CEO wants a holistic story to be told credibly, and his good performance across those broader factors to be recognized appropriately. And what I had consistently, and that was part of the TRWG experience and part of the message that I was asked to bring on behalf of WEF to the discussions of TRWG, was exactly that message, that the business views this as not only important, but essential in order to explain how they create and sustain values. They want to differentiate. They want to show how their business is more resilient, more viable, how they're innovating, how they're attracting talent, how they're managing to navigate some of the geopolitical, environmental, societal risks. And that is absolutely essential to them. They see it as a means of communicating and telling their story. Now, what I really like about S1 and S2 is the point about the fact that it focuses on the management telling the story through their eyes in a holistic way. And that's what I had again and again and again from those business leaders. So I think you're actually knocking on an open door if you take this conversation to the right part of the organization. You can't start it with the people who filled in the spreadsheets yesterday for sustainability reporting. You need to start with the business leaders. You need to start with those charged with governance, and you need to ask some really searching questions as to how you view business performance. What's your business objective? What's your culture? Once you pass that, you're done. S1 and S2 is a natural consequence.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add one quick thing. I think as well, I'd agree with everything that Veronica says, but I also think it might be a little bit of an evolutionary process for some companies. So I think if I think about Australia, for example, which I'm very closely associated with, just finalised their standards, and it's quite a quick turnaround until the first reporting date for the large companies. The reality for many companies is they've just got to get it done. And so there's going to be a mindset, I have to get this done, and I've got these reporting obligations, and it's coming with compliance and filing obligations, and so that does require a particular focus and mindset. But what I think we might then see is an evolutionary process. As we start to see reporting up to the board of directors, because this is now part of the formal filing, the audit committee, et cetera, I hope, and others are going to be involved, and management and the board start saying, we've got what risk? You know, we've got, but surely there's an opportunity here. Once people start digging and identifying these risks and opportunities inside the business, I think it's going to foster an environment where there's greater and deeper understanding of thinking through these issues and opportunities. And I think for those that just had to get it done, they may later come back and say, actually, but now I realize I need to think about this, I could do that. And so we may see some evolution. So I wouldn't panic if people don't start with that perfect mindset, because I think we might see a bit of an evolution in some companies as well.
One final quick question. Yep.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the discussions. I was just thinking in terms of one of the key questions that we normally get, and coming from the non-profit sector, is in terms of assurance of the reporting. And largely, this is done through accounting firms, audit firms. And the questions that come through in terms of skills and capacity to actually look at climate-related risks, sustainability risks, and these are being reviewed by generally what we'd call accountants, right? So maybe if you would comment on that in terms of, you know, the level of assurance and validity that comes from climate risks being reviewed by accounting professionals, so to say. Oh, by the way, I also come from accounting, though. And then the second bit of my question was around non-profit sector, or the third sector. In terms of S1 and S2, I think we've been largely talking about investors, companies. I wanted to hear your thoughts on the applicability to the non-profit sector or third sector, or more so the public sector in general, because more often we're having a lot of funds flowing through the third sector. And the third sector is normally focused on climate and sustainability itself. Yeah, so those are my key sort of questions. Thank you.
Shall I pick up on assurance,
Yes.
and capacity in the ecosystem? So absolutely, the entire corporate reporting ecosystem needs to continue to build capacity. We all need to educate ourselves and travel the journey to greater understanding of this holistic approach to how we view a business and how we report on it. So can we do this today? In my view, yes. The reason is because fundamental skills of assurance provider are no different. What we're looking at here is a greater degree of estimation, and we know how to deal with estimates, and we already have a very robust approach to how we deal with uncertainty, judgments, estimates in the financial statements, in the traditional world of financial reporting, so that skill is easily transferable. But what do we find, and we have just traveled this journey at Deloitte of training all of our practitioners, so we took an approach that basically says every auditor is an assurance provider. We're not going to have a separate assurance team versus a separate audit team. Every auditor is an assurance provider. So the skills are the same. But what we find in the conversations when we look at this, our practitioners who were coming at this from the audit side bring considerably more understanding and challenge how to approach, for example, understanding of risks, understanding the environment of the entity as a whole, the risk of fraud. They've got those skills. All of that is easily transferable. And then you say, what about the deep special expertise, say, around the emissions, GHG emissions calculations, or any specific knowledge around biodiversity or whatnot? Well, audit profession historically worked and continues to work with a huge number of specialist skills, whether they come from the valuations, property valuations, financial instruments valuations, actuarial valuations, you name it, tax. We bring a lot of expertise that help us deal with the risks and realities of the modern world. And so this is another area where we will need to bring the more specialized expertise and work with those experts to establish that we're happy that they provided the right challenge. But fundamentally, yes, we all need to understand some of these things I'm describing now, that all of it is transferable. The skill is fundamentally the same skill of the auditor. And what we are looking at here is how do we satisfy ourselves and how do we get access to the expertise across the ecosystems that brings us the GHG emissions, the human capital issues, the biodiversity understanding, and understanding of the sectors that an auditor already has needs to go hand in hand with that, because fundamentally what the auditor brings to the table is that understanding of industry issues, of drivers of risk and value within the industry. So back to my integrated thinking. So integrated thinking is required by the auditor as well, and goes to the quality of audit, quality of the assurance. So I think it's really important. You ask a very good question there.
And on that note, please do join me in thanking our panelists for this great discussion. Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks to everybody, many stimulus, many things to be considered. So I think that after this panel and the first key address and the first speech by Stefano, the sky is really blue over Milan today. Yes, and will become more and more blue with the final speech, the keynote address of Andreas Barker, President and Chair of IASB.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction, Alessandro, and thank you very much for the organization of this. The good thing about going last in this first set is that much of what I was going to say has already been said. Secondly, I have the opportunity to reflect on some things that have been said. However, that comes at a price, because I'm standing between you and the coffee break, so I try to be brief in my remarks. Let me start with something that both Stefano and Emanuele has touched on, and that is with regard to where does IR stand in our organization, and have we shown the support that I think this framework and the integrated reporting thinking principles deserve. And I think we have. Stefano, to your point, you haven't seen a statement by the two entire boards, but we have repeatedly said in public, in speeches, in fora like this, but also in writing, that we give our unwavering support to the integrated reporting framework, and indeed that we urge companies to actually pick up the adoption if they haven't done so yet. They shouldn't be held back just because it has now found a new home and we haven't turned our standard development back on it. But please rest assured, we truly value the treasure that we have now gotten through the merger, and we stand fully behind this effort. The fact that you don't see us acting on the integrated reporting framework day after day after day, the question that you asked as to how will it be updated, how will it be maintained, these are very valid questions. So I think the add-on that I could probably bring to the panel and to the speeches that you have heard before me is to give you a little bit of context as to how we derive our work program and where we at the IASB stand for now. Because we are in a slightly different place than the ISSB. You've heard Emmanuel and Sue talk about how the integrated reporting principles have actually been embedded into S1 directly. There is no equivalent in the IASB literature that does that. But the IASB is also different in the sense of our standard landscape. We do have 147 jurisdictions that are requiring or allowing the use of IFRSs, but the vast majority of those actually requiring the use of our standards. That's a huge success, but it's also a huge obligation, because each and every jurisdiction do have their own problems, their own demands, and their own needs. And we have to be very cognizant as to how much additional add-on and regulation we bring, because if we change our suite of standards, we change it for those that want the change, but we also change it for those that haven't asked us to change. So it's walking a very fine line and a tightrope. I haven't heard anybody say, forget about integrated reporting, and that's a good news. But that doesn't necessarily equate to a push, a strong push. You have to nourish this further and have to develop that as your highest priority. And I think if we are fair, the ISSB have just concluded an agenda consultation and have heard something similar. It wasn't in the disguise of what should we be doing with integrated reporting and the integrated reporting principles, but it was in the vein of how do you think about the broader landscape of corporate reporting? The ISSB termed that integration in reporting. And stakeholders have said, this is no doubt important. But the question is that the highest importance, the highest priority as of now? And I think that is the right question to ask. Nobody denies it is important, but the question is it the most important thing? And the stakeholder feedback that came to the ISSB said, probably not at this stage. Now, how do we get the feedback? Every 5 years, the IASB does what we call an agenda consultation. The ISSB modeled their agenda consultation in a similar vein, but didn't go for a 5-year horizon. They chose to ask stakeholders what should be on the agenda for the next 2 years. That gives us a prime opportunity because our work programs will come to a joint end in 2026. If I say the work program will come to an end, it doesn't mean that we have an empty plate by that time. We obviously do have ongoing work, and some of our existing work will no doubt stretch beyond 2026. But in 2025, we will be thinking about going to market and ask our stakeholders, what is it that you want us to pay attention to? What is it that you think we should be focusing on? If you believe it should be integrated reporting, if you believe it should be the future of reporting, make yourselves heard. That is where you can actually contribute to this and make really a big difference. It isn't a beauty contest, I should just warn you. It's not that we count the numbers and say, okay, Eurovision context, Germany 12 points, yeah. But surely we listen. But we listen also to arguments. We obviously want to hear from all stakeholders what rationale they give us so that we can actually set out a good decision. So rest assured, even if you don't see us in the public appearing and making these statements, or even get together in the boardroom and actually say, okay, let's pick paragraph or principle so-and-so and let's discuss that, we still have the support for the IR framework. Let me also take this opportunity to just inform you a little bit of some adjacent work, which sometimes I understand is causing a little bit of confusion or a little bit of angst even in some communities, and that is the IASB's work on management commentary. Management commentary is used widely throughout the world. Not probably by that name, management commentary. It's sometimes called management discussion and analysis, or a management report, or an operational financial review, or a strategic report. There are many different names here. And in the vast majority of jurisdictions that apply our standards, that piece of narrative document is not in the remit of national standard setters, but it's actually in the remit of securities regulators or even lawmakers. And it is for that reason that the IASB 15 years ago decided very consciously not to put out a standard, which we normally do, but a practice statement. That's the reason why. Because we didn't want to set out potentially conflicting guidance with things that in certain jurisdictions are just mandatory. But nonetheless, the IASB at that time believed it is important actually to put a marker down and say, hey, narrative reporting is important in terms of an accompaniment to the financial statements, to the numbers and the notes. And one reason for that is obviously that the financial statements largely stop at the reporting date. So they're a little bit of taking stock of what has happened up until today. But if investors are really interested in what's going to happen tomorrow, what are the risks, the opportunities, the strategy, that you can't really bring into the financial statements. That's really for a different type of document, hence narrative reporting. Now, 5 years ago, the IASB looked at its practice statement and found it's completely outdated. It's completely outdated. There were only two options. Either you withdraw that statement altogether and say, no need for anything, or you update it. So the IASB consulted and got strong support for actually doing the latter. Updating, taking stock of the huge developments that have happened, both organizational-wise, the group of 5 as they were then called, but also in terms of theoretical thinking, the advancements, integrated thinking, all of that was not contemplated in the original practice statement. So the IASB convened an advisory group. I happened to be on that, Mark happened to be on that as well, and others as well. We also had the then technical director from the integrated reporting principles on it. So if you look into the exposure draft that was published 3 years ago, you probably find a number of references towards integrated reporting. Not to steal it, not to actually claim competition and make integrated reporting an exercise that was no longer needed, but to just draw the inferences from that particular framework and bring it into another piece of literature, just in the very same way as Emmanuel articulated how the principles were actually embedded in as one. It was the very same thought logic. The two documents have their own right, and they play an important role, but they have different objectives. The objective of management commentary is to give management an opportunity to set out through its eyes how it sees the business. Provide a narrative thinking that could be similar or the same as an integrated report. It could. But some entities may choose not to go that way, and we don't want to prohibit that in the same way. Now, when the project was just hitting the road with the exposure draft, the IASB was established. And there was something on the wall already that this was a likely development, but it wasn't certain. By the time that our deadline closed, the IASB was just announced at COP26. So many stakeholders came back to us and said, great piece of work. We absolutely agree with what you have in here. You've made the right inferences, you've drawn the right connections, go and finalize that. But don't finalize it on your own. Do consult with your soon-to-be established sibling, because everything was pointing that this was the likely course. There was a board to be established that would look into sustainability related financial disclosures, and people said, do work with your sister board on finalizing this. So we consulted our sister board, and they said, all fair, we would like to be informed of that. But again, our highest priority at this stage is a different one, because we are being told you have to develop a standard on climate. We said, okay, got the message. So we parked and paused our work on management commentary to wait until resources would become available on the ISSB so they could actually have time to go through the document with us and think about it. And that was the reason why the work was temporarily abandoned. It wasn't discarded because of the content, it wasn't discarded because there was lacking support, not at all. It was simply because we wanted to consult with the ISSB before we actually finalize anything. And that point only came to fruition earlier this year. The two boards came together for their very first in-person joint meeting, 28 people in the room. It was cozy and warm. But we had a very good and very robust discussion about an array of different topics. It wasn't particular on management commentary, but it was a little bit more on the side of the ISSB's agenda consultation and that future of the reporting, the integration and reporting thing. And we ended up in a very coherent and consistent message. Everyone around the table said, absolutely, that is important. But again, is that the highest priority that stakeholders see at this stage? And the answer was no. Taken that, the ISSB had established their work program, where they currently are, with giving primary emphasis on helping entities implement S1 and S2, with updating the SASB standards, and with taking on 2 new topical standards. With that, the IASB had to go back and say, what do we now do with our management commentary practice statement? We said, we will keep the ISSB obviously informed and ask for input wherever it bears fruition. And Emmanuel already talked about that agenda paper that their board will actually discuss next week about the location of sustainability-related financial disclosures and our management commentary practice statement. So we decided in June this year to actually now go ahead and finalize, basically leave the exposure draft and what we had largely unchanged. We said we will make targeted amendments because we want to take into account the feedback that we got from our stakeholders. Some of them are simply wording related. Some are probably going a little bit more into this conceptual space, talking about what's the relationship between the financial report and the sustainability-related financial disclosures, and that is something that we are about to clarify. But it will be a limited time for revision only. We've set ourselves the goal of only having 3 board meetings, and the first one has already gone, so 2 more to go. And that will enable us to publish a revised version of the practice statement in the first half of next year. We have consulted again with our key stakeholders, being the users for whom we work, but also with securities regulators who have actually drawn heavily on that. And they have both said, please do finalize this. This is highly wanted. The securities regulators actually sent a very strong message and said, if you get this out, we will think about it and try to embed that into our own legislation as much as is possible. And that is obviously great, because it plays into the greater narrative that Emmanuel was talking about. So we tend to think about it as this is taking stock of what we have, and we use the narrative of this being a stepping stone in the broader scheme of the future of corporate reporting, the landscape. We will sit down with our sister board and talk about integration and reporting. When we do that, that will depend on what we hear from the market in our next agenda consultation. So stay tuned, give us your input, and bear with us. But again, rest assured that none of what I've said undermines the validity and the treasure of integrated reporting and the integrated reporting principles that we have inherited. Thank you so very much, and now enjoy your coffee break.
Thanks, Andrew, for speaking about us about the future, and now we have the break. I will tell you that we'll have the break at the ground floor and the first floor, but please don't miss the opportunity to see the exhibition all around, managed by MGMP, and then we will come back here at 11:10, to recover the time. Thanks so much. See you later. Welcome again, and we are very happy to begin again our discussions, and then we have a very important panel that is strictly related to the speech of Andreas Barkov before, about management commentary, a stepping stone to further integration in reporting. The moderator is Linda Meisenhatter, Vice Chair of IASB, and the panelists are Nick Anderson, member of IASB, Urbano Denuccio, who has many duties as a president of the Consiglio Nazionale Dottori Commercialisti, that is the Italian professions, very important, to 120,000 people on his Consiglio, and then he's also associate professor of accounting at the University of Bari, LUM, and he's also IFRS Advisory Council member, and he's also member of our board of our foundation. And then there is Charles Tilley, that is chair of Integrated Reporting and Connectivity Council. So, Linda, the speech is for you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and I'm delighted to be here today. I want to show you that these were the notes that my staff gave me in saying this is how you set up the discussion. Andreas has covered that for me. So I can happily tell the staff that that was completed successfully, okay? But that's fine, because I can then take a minute to tell you a story about how I first discovered what an integrated report was. So quite a number of years ago, I was talking to one of my staff, and she asked me a question about a certain type of disclosure. And I had a friend in a certain company that was it's one of the companies in Canada, where I come from, that is known for the quality of its financial reporting. And I said, no, I know they do some disclosure in that area, let me go look. And so I went and I got to the company website, and I saw this little thing called an integrated report. I said, So I forgot all about what I was supposed to be doing, and I clicked on that, and I started reading. And I don't know how long it was. It could have been 15, 20 minutes, I don't know, but I was very intrigued with this report, because what I sensed right away was it was bringing all these things together. It was connecting all the dots for me about what the company was doing and how it was creating value and planning for the future and things like that. And my staff member came by and said, did you find that disclosure? I go, what disclosure? That was the first time that I actually had spent time looking at an integrated report, and I followed with interest since then the developments. And so now here I am talking about it in terms of what's happening there, but also in terms of what's happening with our project on management commentary. So the panelists have already been introduced, so I'm going to kick it off. And Nick, I'm going to go to you first, okay? Could you tell us how the integrated reporting framework influenced what we did in terms of the ISB's proposals? Because you were around when that exposure draft was put out. I wasn't, but Nick was.
So thank you, Linda. Great to be here this morning to talk about integrated reporting and the relationship with management commentary. So you're right, I was there not only when the exposure draft went out, but I was there when the project was launched in November 2017. And part of that decision to launch the project, as Andreas alluded to, the original management commentary practice statement had become, I'd say, tired, very out of date, was to look at innovations that had occurred in reporting since then. At the forefront of our minds was certainly the integrated reporting framework and what had been achieved through that. We were fortuitous in our timing, because I believe in that same year, the International Integrated Reporting Council had done a feedback statement on the 2013 framework, so there was lots of new information there in terms of what was working well. We had, and Andreas mentioned it earlier, Lisa French, who many of you may know, was the Chief Technical Officer at IRRC there. She was a member of our consultative group. But I think the most powerful and I'd say organic influence came through what we heard from feedback from stakeholders. Everything which we've done in this space has been driven, as actually most of our work is in terms of what we hear from stakeholders. And there, just in terms of the responses they're giving us, telling us what we needed to attend to, particularly from investors who are the final recipients of these reports, was around things like value creation. That was something very much at the forefront of their minds. Value creation may be a relatively new concept for corporate reporting. It's certainly not a new concept for capital markets. Now, there are different types of investors. Some are quite short-term orientated, some are very long-term, but it's a concept that's well understood, and investors wanted more information about that, more information about assets that weren't recognized in the financial statements, a longer-term perspective, more focus on the resources which are critical to the business and to the business model, more information there. So all these things really resonated with integrated reporting. I'd say the last thing that I think is absolutely critical, and we talk about it an awful lot today, is a desire for connectivity, for connected information. I think investors have desired this for as long as I can remember, because when they see information that is connected, that is consistent, it helps them build trust. It helps them build trust in management, build trust in companies, and ultimately for them to build trust in their investment case. And the opposite is true. If you see things which seem to be inconsistent, that erodes trust. And so really these were the things which we were hearing from the market, which very much in line with the integrated reporting framework, and I would say influenced our thinking.
Thanks so much, Nick. So I remember very shortly after I joined the ISB, and it was about the time that I found out I was going to be the vice chair, we'd ask the staff, and Laura, who was here, helped with us, we'd ask the staff to take the board through an education session where we said, here's what the principles are in integrated reporting, and here's what we say in the current version of the exposure draft for management commentary. And they did an education session for us, and I thought it was fascinating to do that and see how much of the ideas were in common. And so Albano and then Charles, I'll ask both of you to answer this question. So thinking about that management commentary document, which aspects of the proposals that sit in management commentary today do you see as the most important that help us promote the integrated reporting principles?
I'll start. Okay. Thank you. Good morning.
He's not shy at all. Isn't that wonderful?
Okay,
Go ahead.
Okay. Welcome. First of all, welcome in this sunny and blue sky town like Milan, of course. We will try to create a sustainability atmosphere, just to speak about management commentary. Let me introduce, which is, of course, the professional accountant point of view about this, because, as you know, I see here not a presentation, but my CV. There is all my roles, but as professional accountants, I can absolutely say that in Italy, professional accountants and CNDCC, my institute, have a particular attention to sustainability. And we play for sure a major role in Italy on this issue. In fact, CNDC, for this reason, I would like to thank you, first of all, it's not sustainable. Okay, hello? Yes. Milan is the best town, don't worry. Let me say, so academic organization like O.I.B.R and GBS with which we interact, let me say, quite daily, thanks to Alessandro Lai, Stefano Zambon, Laura Girella, and this is for me really a great opportunity because we have the same focus, the same view about these issues. But also want to express my personal thank you to IFRS, to which I'm proud to belong because I'm a member of IFRS Advisory Council, and I consider strategic for all the issue about sustainability and integrated reporting. CNDC also, just to remember, has been member of the IRC that then merged into Value Reporting Foundation that then merged into IFRS Sustainability Alliance, different steps. Last year, with a colleague of mine, we have done an activity of investigation on the interaction between professional accountants and sustainability. In fact, we are about to publish an academic paper on this, and we have discovered that, or better, we have identified 3 different phases The first phase has been the skepticism phase. The second one, knowledge phase. Now, right now, we are living a phase in which professional accountants are the backbone of integrated reporting, or better, using a word dear to IRC, integrated thinking. Having said that, answering to your question, what we have recorded in Italy is that financial reporting, in particular management commentary, and in particular the U version of management report, is changing tune. And this is a lesson taught by professionals and eminent scholars that some years ago have theorized the possibility to combine information of different nature in the same document. In fact, the trends are now not towards two different reporting, one financial and the other one non-financial, but towards a single report that take in due consideration the whole corporate phenomenon into the corporate reporting dimension. If it's true that ESG factors have already applied by business practice, it's also true that management report is also may discover, may express, may describe better the corporate performance, the ability of an entity to create value in the market, which are the interaction of the variable in the entity, and in particular, another very important information, which will be corporate performance in the future. These are all information considered strategic, essential for stakeholders and capital providers, investors in general. In my point of view, management commentary is the best document, or is perhaps the best one, in which we have a combination of this information, of this dimension. And also, it's also the document in which it's possible to catch in the right way, which is the ability of the entity to create value in the market. Because now in Italy, we have three documents in particular: financial statements, sustainability reporting, and management commentary. Financial statement sustainability reporting satisfy information needs of stakeholders, of the parties interested in, okay? And they are, as I will say after, very complicated sometimes to be understood. Now it's a problem also, as Nick has told before, also a connectivity among all these documents. IR framework, in my opinion, is a document that in the future has great opportunity to improve of a development. We all know that the principle that guide IR framework and management commentary are very similar, are quite the same. Also, the information provided inside are quite the same, because we have sustainability information, financial information, other factors and other aspects information. But in my opinion, management commentary, of course, not only in my opinion, from this perspective in Italy, it represents the best documents in which we have that can represent the combination of these two dimensions.
Thank you. Charles?
Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Lovely to be here. Thank you very much indeed, O.I.B.R, for putting on this event. It's really good, and I think the messaging that I've heard this morning generally is very positive, although some of the things you've just said I'm slightly less positive about. But I think if we're talking about comparing the management commentary and integrated report, we just need to think about them coming from really, two different places. The management commentary is all about explaining further in depth the financial statements, and that's absolutely right, and it's really good, and it, as you say, it's very positive in that respect. Integrated reporting came about in 2010, and I've been involved from day one, and have a similar passion, I think, to you in that regard. It came about because it was about how companies tell their story about how they are overall creating value, and they're creating value first and foremost for their key relationships through their business model. And it's only as a consequence of how well they do that job that you then get the financial outcomes which are expressed in the financial statements. So they come from two different places. The integrated reporting framework is very much about the business model, the opportunities and risks and the trade-offs in terms of how you think about those opportunities and risks. And as a consequence, as Emmanuel has said, as Andreas has said, as many other people have said, integrated thinking is absolutely fundamental to that activity. And ultimately, the quality of the integrated thinking is down to the quality of the governance and management of the organization. And therefore, I think that's the key thing, that if we're going to get consistency between S1 and S2, which is very much focused upon that governance, we need to get into the management commentary as well. And then what we then will achieve is a consistency of the accounting statements or accounting standards and the sustainability standards. They provide context and specificity to the overall integrated reporting. And if we get that, then the quality of that integrated reporting gets up. It enables people such as Veronica at Deloitte to undertake audits more effectively because they have that specificity. But it means that you then have you have the ability for the comprehensive corporate reporting. I think the one thing that I would want to, so to conclude this early statement, I would say the key thing that management commentary needs to address is the governance aspect. The other thing that I just want to say, which is, in my view as chair of the IRCC, is the integrated reporting framework today is absolutely fit for purpose. It was updated in 2021. We've heard today how both chairs of both boards are saying, you should be using it. It actually does help you tell your story. That's what we should be really getting that message out there. And it's a key message for obviously progressing corporate reporting, and they are great. It's a great asset within the IFRS Foundation.
Thanks, Charles. So it's very interesting when we think about this, because one of the things that I know from my days in financial reporting is that management always has the notion of what they have to do because the regulator requires it. And so I'm going to go back to you, Albano, and say, what do you think about the role of regulators in promoting the principles and helping us bring together perhaps the role that management commentary has traditionally played in different jurisdictions, and integrated thinking and integrated reporting? What do you think about that?
Yes, Linda. Let me make a brief distinction between large companies and small and medium entities in Italy. But not only in Italy, let me say all over Europe, because, in Italy we have 90% of small and medium entities. So the quality of these entities, the health of these entities, also the organization of this entity is the health, the nature, the quality, and the organization of the whole economic Italian system. And as a CNDCC, we have, of course, spent and put a great attention on this kind of entities. Why I'm making this distinction? For what concerns large companies, we all know the IFRS framework have considered and have created in a management commentary a wide interest on sustainability disclosure. In fact, sustainability disclosure is a part of the management commentary. What we have recorded in the European debate is that there is a great fear of complexity due to an extreme technicality that we, of course, record, respect financial statement and sustainability reporting, and at the same time, also the regulatory framework appears to be extremely technical. And which is the risk? The risk is that we create a confusion, let me say. We can create a disorganization in the reporting. So we have, in my opinion, taken in due consideration the complexity, and we have to manage this complexity, because the risk is that that in the future will not have the possibility to reach the goal of this report. In my perspective, the management commentary is like a container in which you have the synthesis of the granularity of IFRS data point and of the IFRS compliant financial statement. And I think also that management commentary could be, or better, is the right documents in which you have the possibility to understand if the entity is following a sustainability behavior in the market, and has also the ability to be going concern in a medium and long period, also in the market. So you can understand easily that this information are strategic for stakeholders, absolutely strategic for stakeholders. On the other side, SMEs. I think that also for the SMEs there is a problem of complication and technicality, because first of all, SMEs are not organized or well organized like the large companies. And it's a basic problem. In fact, we in terms of professional accountants, play a strategic role, especially as strategic consultants in the organization of the single entities. And for them, and we all know also that European legislature, just to remember Directive 51/2003, also for the SMEs has considered very important the sustainability information. In fact, there is also with this directive in Italy we have the indication by the European legislation to improve the information on environment, on personal, all the non-financial information. What we have to do? I think that management commentary in general, so it's a problem of clearness. Management commentary for SMEs is an extraordinary tool for three different goals. First of all, to understand clearly, to have the exact information, how the SMEs is able to play its own role in the market. Of course, in a medium long term. Secondly, how the ESG factors interacts in the entity. Because ESG factors are absolutely, if well managed, a great opportunity for the entity to grow in the market. But at the same time, if these factors are not well managed, are, in my opinion, a great risk for the entity. And this is the point very important, because to manage the ESG factors means that you have a good consultants, a good professional accountants, let me say, on your side. Third, if you have a good management of ESG factors, you have the possibility to prevent the risk. And you know, we are living in a market where we have a situation of great instability. We don't have due to different events, okay? So prevent means that you have the possibility to have the ability to prevent, to mitigate the risk, to adopt the right decision in the right moment, to guarantee the going concern of the entity in the market. For conclusion, I want to say another thing, that I consider a great opportunity for SMEs, the project of voluntary sustainability standards for SMEs. But let me express my concern about this. It's important to have a scalable approach. Because, of course, if you want to have a widespread adoption by SMEs, it's necessary that you made a tailor-made exercise of these standards in Italian, of course, SMEs. So it's a matter of complexity in general.
Well, I thank you. And so I think we have somebody who can help us explain connectivity on a go-forward basis and how this all fits together. It's well done. Thank you very much. So Nick, I'm going to go back to you for a second. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, Andreas gave us a Coles Notes version of where we're headed in terms of our approach to finalizing this version of management commentary. Can you add a little context to that for us?
Yeah, of course. And these are what we're terming to be targeted refinements. So we're reflecting on the feedback that we received on the exposure draft and obviously subsequent developments in corporate reporting, including, importantly, the establishment of the ISSB and the consolidation of the Value Reporting Foundation, and with that, the Integrated Reporting Foundation is now an important element of what we have at the foundation. So reflecting on that, we're doing a few things, and we agreed at the last month's board meeting to emphasize that the objective of management commentary is to provide management's perspective on those factors that could affect an entity's ability to create value or generate cash flows, including sustainability-related factors, to ensure that those are explicitly brought into the objective. We'll look at the value creation, how that's been expressed in the draft practice statement to see whether that can be better aligned with integrated reporting. And there'll be some things around tying up the language to make sure the language is more consistent across S1, S2, integrated reporting framework, as and where we can. I think an important clarification within this, and I think it's a genuine misunderstanding, is what we mean by management. So we use the word, we call it management commentary, but if you dig beneath the surface and you look at what we have in the conceptual framework, it could equally be those charged with governance. And in many jurisdictions, reports are required from those charged with governance rather than from the executives. So we hope to clarify that through these refinements. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Now I'm just going to ask you to elaborate on something we've heard, and then I'm going to go back to Albano with the same question. But you've heard the word stepping stone a number of times today. Didn't know they were going to take on such a powerful meeting when we had them in our paper, but we talked about this notion of management commentary and the improvements we're trying to make, basically bringing it forward and making it current and fit for purpose as the stepping stone to get ready for when we are ready for a project and integration in reporting. So can you elaborate a little bit on that from the IASB side?
Sure. So I think what that does, and we have used those words stepping stone, is that first of all what we want to do is that we had a solid base to step from. And what we had was a set of suggestions, proposals that had been in an exposure draft, and we wanted to crystallize those, to refine those. And now we have that solid base. And I think what we'll end up with is what will be a codified standard-like set of requirements, which there's a lot of IR principles reflected in those requirements, but it'll be a different nature, it'll be distinct, certainly in that respect. And the two boards will come together to think about how we move forward. But just let me tell you what excites me from a personal perspective, and that's really the opportunity to extend the reach of integrated reporting principles, but in particular, integrated thinking. Correct. Because I think that's the way what investors really want in terms of connected information. That is the route to connected information. So if we can also bed that into the management commentary thinking, and that becomes, in some respects, a prerequisite for providing a good management commentary, is that it has to be coherent and consistent and tied up. That is the end game that excites me.
That's very helpful. Albano,
Could I just come in on?
Absolutely.
on that?
Absolutely. I'm not the person to stop you, Charles. Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think creating this strong foundation is really important because we do need both S1 and S2 and the ongoing sustainability standards and the accounting standards to be foundational in terms of their support of overall corporate reporting. So I think that is absolutely critical. We're on a journey, and this is, a very exciting journey, and we've made, I think, a huge amount of progress. I want to repeat, though, that the integrated reporting framework is fit for purpose today. It was updated in 2021. It's adopted by 3,000 companies globally. Companies are not run in silos, so the financial reporting is really important, the sustainability reporting is really important, but we have to have it integrated, and that's the key issue. So, on where are we? We've made huge progress on the foundational side of things, and we'll continue to do so. The framework is fit for purpose, and where the next stage, or at some stage, we need to have a clear vision of what the future for corporate reporting looks like from the IFRS Foundation in terms of, what is the end game? Maybe there never is an end game, but, where are we shooting for at the moment? And just to make, if I could, just one point about the smaller companies. I've been involved with lots of small companies, and I've run one which is relatively small, 400 people. And Actually, I ran another one with 25 people. And if you use the principles of that framework, it really helps you run your business. Instead of saying, use the principles, instead actually say, try and produce internally an integrated report. And certainly what I've experienced is you find actually there's a lot you don't know about your business and you don't have the right information, and it really helps you do that. Thank you.
Yes, no, I couldn't agree more about what Nick and Charles has just said. Let me just tell you what is the real situation, or better, my personal condition now in Italy, respect what you have asked us. First of all, the great difficulty is not just to transfer skills to our colleagues in terms of technical skills, but to guide and to manage a cultural transformation. Because, in my opinion, to guarantee a full integration in reporting, you need to have a different way of thinking about what you are doing in the entity, in the company in general. This is a problem not only for the professional accountants, but in particular for entrepreneurs, and in particular for SMEs. In Italy, we have the use to adopt something new only when there is a law that obliges you to adopt something new. All the changes in Italy are law-driven. Now in Italy, last week, we have the adoption of the CCRD. So I'm sure that in the short time, all small and medium entities will be, let me say, obliged to adopt and to embrace sustainability thinking, not sustainability reporting, because there is a law, but not because they have understand really the meaning of this new cultural behavior. And this is, let me say, the great difficulty. I have to thank, of course, Alessandro and Stefano, because as I told you, starting my presentation, we are working in touch really daily to make this cultural, to guide and to manage this cultural revolution. This is the point. And this is the great difficulty of this passage from a financial statement, just numbers, to something else that is the interpretation of the numbers, not only for the entity, but for the entire market in which the entity operates and play. This is the great challenge, goal.
I'm sure you're up to it.
Thank you.
So Charles, let me circle back with you, and after I ask Charles this last question, I'll open it up for audience questions. So we've talked about the influence the integrated reporting movement has had on management commentary, but how else have integrated reporting ideas, integrated thinking influenced the foundation's work in the time you've spent with us?
Well, I think I think actually you've heard everybody else this morning talking about that. I mean, it's really gone to the heart of the IFRS Foundation. I think the only thing that I would, excuse me, probably too much wine last night. The one thing that we just have to get out there is that message is that, you know, if you try to do integrated reporting, as I was saying earlier, you'll identify things that you don't understand. The heart of integrated reporting is the business model and relationships. And the message that I would like to see everybody thinking about is, first of all, have they got a really clear understanding of their business model and what is the differentiator from all of their competitors? And then what are the key relationships in that business model? And it's amazing once you start thinking about those material relationships. And then what then comes from that is the risks, and risk identification is, you know, fantastic in that regard. And of course also opportunities. So I think what we've heard this morning is just how much the integrated reporting framework and thinking has really influenced the foundation and both the boards. I think the one thing that I would really urge is, well, two things I would really urge. One is that we really are advocating the value of that reporting. And secondly, that we really do need a vision as to what the end game is and what the ecosystem is to support that end game, and that's particularly in regard to assurance, but many wider things as well, education in particular.
So thank you all. So we have time for a couple of quick questions from the audience. Do we have any questions? It's an opportunity. Oh, we have one right here.
Hi all, thank you for the lovely discussion. My question is to Professor Nussio. With regards to the evolution in the space, we have seen TCFD lapsing into, being adopted rather into the IFRS foundation framework. Integrated reporting forms a part of that foundation's work right now, but a lot of impact materiality or double materiality concepts used in this comes from SASB. So where do you see the future of integrated reporting, or integrated thinking probably will stay because that forms a foundation for any reporting framework, but where do you see integrated reporting lying in the landscape? Would it still exist individually, or would it cease from its existence and get kind of like a TCFD kind of adoption in the IFRS foundation?
Let me say that which is the future of integrated reporting, if I understand, you want to know. But I think that as I told you before, due to this legislation that in Italy, of course, I'm speaking in terms of local legislation, due to this legislation that is driving the obligation to have this kind of information in of course, all the entities, companies' documents, I think that in the next future, not only for the large companies, because large companies already adopt, of course, an integrated disclosure, let me say, but also for SMEs, we will have the same effect. The problem is not if we will adopt in the future integrated reporting also for small and medium entities. The problem is another one. How can we apply this integrated reporting in the SMEs world? Because this is the great challenging goal to reach. Because as I told you before, SMEs are not well organized. The SMEs entrepreneur is someone that considers himself the only one that knows everything. Let me say, in Italy, when you speak with a small entrepreneur, he says, please stay there, don't worry. I know what I want to do and what I'm able to do. This is a cultural situation. It's very difficult to pass this personal situation. This is why I consider the law-driven obligation an opportunity for us, because it's the only way to speak with them and to create the right adoption of this kind of information. Last week, Italian government has adopted Italian law, the LGS 125, in which the government has established the obligation for all the companies to have the certification of integrated reporting by the professional accountants in their role of auditors, okay? So this is a very important step forward, the risk of greenwashing, because, you know, also for the small and medium entities, this is not a risk, it's more than a risk, because they are not, for two reasons, because they are not able to understand really the rules, the sustainability rules, so sometimes because they want to give not right information. With this law now, all the sustainability reporting must be certified by a professional accountants. As this is another puzzle in an activity that push towards an integrated application of integrated reporting. This is a great battle of my institute, CNDCC, because I, the president of the institute, asked the Prime Minister, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, to adopt this kind of laws in order to have an effective application of the integrated thinking in our country.
Well, thank you very much, and we're at the end of our time, and I realize we're standing between you and your lunch break. So let me thank the panelists and just make one final comment. It's very clear to me from this discussion, there's no competition here. These are products that work together, and ultimately they'll be moving things forward, and that's what we all want. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
thanks Linda and the panelists. So management commentary, integrated thinking, and business models are strictly connected, and we'll learn a lot from this panel. And now we have, coming back to a topic that we already dealt in the first panel, that is the relationship between integrated reporting framework and one of the IFRS standards on the IFRS S1. The moderator will be NDD, Noli, and Dosian, member of ISSB, and the panelists will be Eleanor Adelgab, CFO of Executive Director of Plat Energy PLC, Professor Güler Aras, Chair of Integrated Reporting Association of Turkey, George Lanferman, President of the German Accounting Standard Setter, and Mark Dassen, partner at KPMG, President of Accountancy Europe. Sorry for my bad pronunciation of your name, but it's so difficult.
Let's make sure we get the right microphones. I declare that we are the first full panel that occupies all the chairs. And because we have the great privilege of following on so much wisdom and great thought, there's not very much to say to open, except to introduce again very briefly that we have someone who is not just implementing and is a major member of the community, Professor Güler, who's also been driving implementation of S1 and S2. And then we have Eleanor, who comes from actually the country that first implemented IFRS S1 and S2, is not strong on integrated reporting, but is an example of where IFRS S1 and S2's implementation is in tandem with integrated thinking and integrated reporting, which is really exciting. And then we have Georg Lanferman, who is a standard setter in Europe and is grappling with the bigger issue of, many different standards being implemented at the same time. And then, of course, we have you, who are going to tell us from a global perspective, and you require no introduction. What I always say about Mark is that he actually has in his CV, if you look at it, he has all of the alphabet soup somehow mangled in there. So, and again, one of the things that Mark said to me this morning is that in the recent report that they've done, actually North Africa, you can see that there's been an uptake in integrated reporting, also again in tandem with S1 and S2. So what we're talking about today is the deep dive into IFRS S1 and the integrated reporting framework, and we're going to run this a bit like a dialogue. I've given everybody permission to jump in on each other, and I'm also going to give the floor, the space to, between rounds, if you have a burning question, just come and stand here. I'm only going to take 2, possibly 3, and your questions have to be short, otherwise I'll take only 1. So, and I'm going to start with you, Eleanor, actually, because I'd like to take this from practice. We've heard a lot about the ideas, but the reason why the IFRS Foundation was mandated with the ISSB, and this was on public demand, was to help set a global baseline and to reduce the alphabet soup. And I wanted to hear from practice. How is that for you as a Chief Financial Officer, and congratulations on your appointment and as an Executive Director, and also congratulations on embracing as an accountant sustainability and integrated reporting and S1 and S2. How is that journey for you, Ben?
Thank you very much indeed, and clearly the way you've articulated the various points, I think everybody in the room may appreciate that it's been a very interesting journey for us. And maybe before I get into that, is just to refer to some of the conversations that were held earlier. And also to, it's clear that there's been a lot of talk around the whole connectivity. In a lot of my career, I was very familiar with the IFRS and the journey to IFRS, and IFRS constantly is revising standards and offering more and more regulations that we need to follow. And so, you know, as a public company, an energy company and a public company, we're very used to intense disclosures and, you know, following the various standards that keep coming out. And so when we were elected, of course, to start reporting on S1 and S2, the biggest challenge I had was from the board level, helping them understand what exactly it was we needed to do. And that was the first issue we had. And within our leadership, we had a sustainability directorate, we had a strategy directorate, we had a finance directorate. And so there was this sort of, okay, who is doing what, and where is it all going to end up? And the CEO, our CEO is very strategic, and he said, listen guys, there's no one person who's going to do anything here. The operations directorate is going to focus on dealing with the environmental aspects of ESG. The finance directorate that has historically managed disclosures, has managed the reporting, will focus on that. And of course, the strategy will continue to refresh what the business has been doing. So I think for us, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. And this is because our business already had a strategy around building a sustainable business, and in Nigeria, supporting the country to deliver the energy transition. So the fact that we had that strategy driving this helped us. So all we then had to do was understand, okay, what do we then need to focus on initially? And we had already done scenario analysis, you know, S2 we had done before in the previous year, so there was a lot to leverage. And so we focused a lot more on S1 and started thinking more deeply around the risks, you know, the sustainable risks, the climate risks. And so technically, it really was about how do you then take all this information that's already in the business and then bring it to a position where people can then understand how we drive, you know, the information through the reporting. And so that's what we did. We had a lot of help from we had some of the consultants, you know, like KPMG support us. There was a lot of dialogue and conversations. And I think at the end of the day, the report, basically spoke to all of this. Now where we are in 2024, even though we issued an integrated report in 2020, in 2024 for 2023, we still actually kept the sustainability report because we thought, okay, let's make sure we don't miss out on anything. Let's make sure that people who are so used to looking at our sustainability report don't feel like, oh, where is this? And now, going into 2024, we're now going to properly integrate and make sure that we're taking advantage of, obviously some of the information that we've been learning from. So,
Eleanor, thanks for that. Yeah. And that's very powerful because, and I won't stop you there because I want to ask Güler to build on that. Very powerful because what you've just described is actually the country mandated ISSB standards, but through the ISSB standards, you found your way to integrated reporting. So, and it was very helpful, and it brought integrated thinking into the organization. Now, I'd like to work it the other way around. And by the way, Linda said to me this morning, our previous moderator, that she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, because we both broke our wrists, and the doctor said, right, you've got to take the thing off. And she was like, yeah, but it still feels kind of broken, and I'm worried. And she was like, he said, you just have to take it off, and you need to trust the process. And so I'm taking it off, actually, deliberately on this panel. I planned to take it off before, because I think we need to trust the process. I'm looking at Caroline and Jonathan and Laura, and I know how much within the organization we're constantly thinking about, we need to trust the process that actually integrated reporting and integrated thinking combined with the specificity of S1 and S2 will bring a better outcome. That's something I've heard you say, Güler. Would you like to expand on that?
Yes, exactly. So maybe I should start something, talk about Turkey, what's going on. You are one of the main person, you know what's going on in our country. Actually, we started our journey, maybe we can say it's integrated thinking and reporting roadmap. We started our journey with IRRC about more than 10 years ago, established our network, Integrated Reporting Association Turkey, and then we just turned out as association later. So it was the main roadmap for us. It was the main roadmap for us to increase the competition level of the companies in Turkey, to align with the global level of the companies, which was very important in terms of government phase, and we aim to increase the quality of the reporting and companies to increase their competitive level. So we just started just like investor perspective in Turkey, and we had a lot of steps, and improved this process, and then in Turkey, at the end of 2023, we regulated IFRS S1 as S2 as a mandatory. We published this mandatory regulation. My association have significant impact on the behind of this regulation. We just work very hard with regulatory body, public oversight, accounting and auditing body regulated this standards in Turkey. That will be mandatory next year, 2025 for 2024 reports. So there is that 4 team behind of this process, actually. I would like to maybe unpack. We are reshaping our reporting ecosystem, not like just implementing IFRS S1 and S2. This is just part of our aim. So how can we reshape this ecosystem to get more benefit for the company, business and economy, which is our main aim, actually. We are not working just one by one, company by company. Our micro and macro level aim is very important. So first thing is interoperability. Interoperability for us, not only working with GRI and ESRC, working together with all organizations and related parties, like Integrated Reporting Association Turkey and regulatory body and public companies, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Environment, and other regulatory bodies in Turkey, Capital Market Board of Turkey, and Borsa Istanbul, which is one of our founding institutions. So we work really hard together to just create real value. So, for example, Borsa Istanbul in Turkey, one of the first stock exchange produced integrated report and recommended all listed companies to produce integrated report. Integrated report for us, just like an umbrella reporting, it covers S1 and S2 and other, if necessary, reporting requirements like ESRC and GRI. So S1 and S2 actually not enough to fill the integrated report. Integrated report more than the standards. This is the framework. So of course, step by step, we will increase the standard of IFRS, but still important to know what is missing, what we needed. And second thing is, in Turkey, we are focusing on to prepare the companies who will produce report next year based on IFRS S1 and S2, which is connectivity. The connectivity, one of the main issues for reporting, not only for S1 and S2, also important for integrated report. Actually, one of the unique things you can provide for investors to show this connectivity. All others, rest of them, you can create this information, you can find somewhere else. But if you want to financialize the information, you have to focus on connectivity. If you don't solve this problem, reporting is just like kind of generic for us. So this is another team we are trying to challenge, and this is another team to work on it. Third thing is that the assurance. Assurance will be mandatory next year also in Turkey. It means that mandatory reporting and plus assured information will be mandatory. The regulators and standards trying to discipline the companies and also trying to protect the investors and all stakeholders. So assurance is one of the main tools for that. You can produce the information, but you never know it's reliable or not. And also you can produce the information, you never know comparable or not, or consistent or not. So assurance is the mandatory, but assurance needs extra effort, of course. This is another team. We are working really, really hard. And last thing for our reporting ecosystem is changing mindset for the company based on integrated thinking. It is not reporting. It's like integrated thinking and implementation is more than combining some information and standards and whatever and regulation. You have to change your mindset to get benefit for the company itself, but also benefit for all investors. Because for integrated reporting, we starting with the strategy. Without strategy, everything is almost nothing. You know, you have to show the companies, investors, and stakeholders your strategy, value creation, value erosion, value protection. We have to always remember investing for future, not past. You have to show future outlook with a reliable information, with a strong strategical base.
Gula, ever since I've met you, you've always been such a powerhouse, not just kind of being such a visionary, but you've also been such a great influence in terms of your own country's regulatory adoption and this cohesive vision that you're building. And especially because you have ESRS, which is what takes me to Georg, who actually has that big mandate of now trying to marry integrated reporting, ISSB standards. Of course, we sit in your town, Frankfurt, and ESRS at the same time. Would you like to speak to how your journey is progressing? And also the fact, actually, so there's one word that everybody knows I love called proportionality, making sure that the standards are also useful for smaller entities.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. At the moment, I think we have, I would say, quite a challenging agenda in terms of implementation. So you see there also, but it's not only a German problem. We've heard also the Italians already making intervention on that part and simply talking also about silos and in the end, what does this really do to reporting? For Germany, I think also like we have got now the first wave of the companies, I would say, implementing about 550 entities, and the bulk is still to come for financial year 2025. So about another 13,000, and would say limited liability companies, not only this way listed in the first wave, but in the end creating certainly this particular challenge. We've had, coming back to silence in the Italian case, to certainly a situation where ESS as such and is enshrined in the CSRD to simply say, okay, we have a particular section in the report, in this way, the management report, in order to report on that. And we've certainly also have certain, like now also potential solutions in the ESRSs, namely talking about incorporation by reference, which could play, I would say, a decisive role, and also coming back here to Gula's, would say, strategic angle on things where I think you can certainly reconsider certain aspects on how you report in order to achieve this more, I would say more also strategic issue. In terms of implementation projects, I think the German companies from this 550 first cohort are fairly advanced. We are now in the, would say, the final stages of the implementation, and you see also in those implementation projects thoughts, I think, which go very much in parallel to also what the S1 and S2 thinking, I would say, embody. Certainly, they have a strategic angle to this, reflecting on what the company does, and also in the end, the reporting side, which needs to be put into practice. One striking thing for me was, in the end, we also did some kind of analysis of DAX 40 companies in summertime, to see how many topics are there, for this wide array of ESG topics. So you come back certainly to E1, which equals S2. There's a particular challenge. Everybody has to report on that. We have got also something on the social side, own workforce, and also the G standard is certainly also, I would say, creating certainly more attention than those who are lying in between, I call it this way. Having said this, certainly the particular challenge at the moment, if people start to write reports, is the sheer volume. You have at least 100 pages, more rather 150 pages, sometimes 200 pages. So is there a concise story? Can we look at this from a strategic angle? Of course, you have this basic TCFD, would say, setup. However, if I was an investor, I would look to that, would look for this, would say, concise story to be embedded. And this is something that we also try to address in the German standard setting context, because we have what called the old financial side. And also in our management report standard. We have also addressed here, for example, then business model strategy as potential reporting elements, which also is mirrored, I think, in the management commentary to a large extent. And the idea is certainly to emphasize this element. Simply say, okay, can we make this a more concise story, talking about a business model, incorporating in the end sustainability aspects. This is for us, I would say, a key aspect. It's not mandatory, it's not going to be mandatory, but in the end offering companies the possibility to, in the end, reducing again perhaps a little bit of the complexity, at least telling the story. However, in the medium term, I will also see a topic around, in the end, what do we need as in terms of volume? If you simply try to compare what is there now and also what is now growing in terms of pages here, which I think could be seen as excessive. So this is something in the end perhaps for the new European Commission to address.
Very interesting comments. What I hear you say is, one, interoperability is working. The question of conciseness is a priority, and I'm coming to you, Mark, now, and I want to remind the room that if there is an urgent question, there's the podium there, you have to bring yourself down. And very, very importantly in that regard as well, what are the trends, Mark, globally, in terms of, one, perhaps even the opportunity that the request that an integrated report is concise, the fact that S1 and S2 brings specificity and, you know, material decision useful information for investors, that's a potential marriage. And as Georg just said, it's so important that we have the material information without the voluminousness that is threatening. How realistic is this, and where are we so far?
Yeah, let me maybe also first go back to what Emmanuel was saying on past, present, future. I like that, right? So I've been involved with the integrated reporting initiative more or less from the start, and I think, first of all, I would like to say that we actually also have to count our blessings, right? Because I think we really actually managed over the years to bring the integrated thinking and the integrated reporting into the mainstream of reporting, and I think that is not a small achievement, right? That we already have. And when we were looking, I mean, the integrated reporting is a framework, right? And we always said financial reporting is already sorted through IFRS, right? But if you look at all the other elements, if you talk about the other capitals, there was still actually very little in terms of guidance on how to do it on a global level. And I think, you know, with S1 and S2 coming in, and it's been said before, I think we're getting much more specificity, and we're getting actually blanks that were in the framework now becoming much more concrete. And I think that is terribly helpful in completing the system, right? And so I see, therefore, that S1 and also S2 with the specificity is just going to, you know, fill a blank that we have, and I think they are very much helpful in that respect. I want to pick up on a comment that Gula made on, yeah, and if I look then in many places in the world, it's now becoming mandatory. And so you have mandatory reporting, right? Albano was saying in Italy, things start to move when it becomes mandatory. Now it is becoming mandatory, and also assurance becoming mandatory. And I think that is actually going to be helpful in one way, because it really focuses the minds. You see now in the discussions that I have had that it's board level matter. Boards are asking themselves, what's my responsibility here? How do we actually organize our governance? And so those who weren't on that yet and didn't do it naturally, and many did, but many also didn't, they are now really thinking, you know, how do we actually manage this topic? And how do we incorporate it in the governance, and how do we embed it in our performance management? And actually all the things that we have been advocating for, that is helpful. I think assurance is also going to be helpful, because it hopefully takes out a bit of the fluffiness and the softer narratives that we've had in the past. And I think Veronica mentioned greenwashing. I think we have an obligation as assurance providers also to look at that. What I saw in the past is that, you know, we were asked to assure very often on a voluntary basis, and it was all focused on metrics, and it was all focused on individual KPIs. But now we actually have to say something about the whole report, right? And again, I think that is all helpful if you think about integrated reporting, at least the concept of it, and looking at things in a holistic way. So let me stop at that for the moment. There's more to say, but maybe in the second round.
I think I love the fact that you brought back in this concept of past, present, and future. And Gula, you've done a lot of research on this, and you started by describing those 4 principles and also a vision that you have for the future in Turkey of a comprehensive global corporate reporting framework, and the way that these pieces, especially integrated reporting and the ISSB standards, play together. Can you speak a little bit to that vision?
Of course. It is like in Turkey, as I told you, it's just initiatives, and this result will started based on the global reporting framework and design, which is our benefit. For example, if company prepare integrated report, already more ready than other companies to implement IFRS S1 and S2. So it means that if they have integrated thinking vision, they can easily adapt the standards, so which is very important. Most of the companies produce integrated report are lucky to implement this one, and they are demanding more. As I told you before, okay, we are implementing IFRS S1 and S2, where is social information, etc. I said it's coming soon. So new standard is coming in this one. So, but the problem is that maybe I can share. Still, companies in Turkey have to respect ESRC, because we are close country to Europe. They are operating with European companies, and also we already using GRI. So one of the biggest challenges is that how they implement, how they disclose all this information together in integrated reporting. And still, integrated report, one of the best ways to combine all this information. I don't want to just discuss about the size, because I have a solution. And this digitalization and technology are very, very, very helpful to produce concise information. You don't need to report everything. You can give a link for the detailed information to reach necessary information, whatever who is asking, investor and stakeholders. Still, concise information will be in the integrated report, but detailed information, you can give a link to go detailed one, but which is, of course, necessary. It needs a technical capacity. Another issue of course, we have a vision, okay, but we need technical knowledge, capacity to disclose this information with a quality way. This is important. But the most important thing is that I mentioned before, the people trying to struggle to get more guidance about the connectivity and materiality, which is confusing because ESRC is asking double and we are asking single materiality. This is another question mark. And they are struggling to collect data from supply chain. That's another, difficulties to challenge. And also, connectivity needs to take into this game financial stuff. So financial executives and financial staffs have to understand, have to know connectivity to help to disclose. And so we have to increase the capacity in the financial staff. Not only, like Emmanuel said, we don't need to just focus on the sustainability department. Every department, every function have to know what is the relationship with the responsibility with the sustainability. So another target is that to increase the capacity of all in function, especially in the finance department, to understand and to disclose connectivity issues.
Perfect handover to Elena, given that she's a CFO. And also good news is that we will soon have a publication, educational material on materiality, which is strongly led. I think that will be very helpful also for value chain, supply chain actors. And I see, Mark, you're nodding vehemently, so I'm coming to you on assurance, because that's also very important on trust. But first to you, Elena.
Yeah, so I'm just going to give a very quick example. I think it will help. Now, for SEPLAT, we have a major project to end routine flaring. In Nigeria, there are penalties for flaring. The cost of that penalty is more than the value of the gas if you manage to get the gas utilized. So if you think about the revenue in the profit statement, which is in the back section, so let's just say $100 million of revenue from selling your gas, that whole value will be eroded in penalties if you don't eliminate flaring. So for us, that's the link, okay? So you make the link, and so the business understands that that penalty is also not a tax-deductible cost, so you're really suffering it twice. So the business now understands that there is a focus on ending routine flaring. It's all the way at the board level. In our company, we have a board that is we have a sustainability board committee. So there's a focus for that committee as well to pay attention to these things that have a risk of eroding value. So over and above that, this is just one example. We have about 11 material issues that in our business we are focusing on, because we have to assess what are the risks around these material issues, how are we managing those, the risks on those material issues, and what is the business doing on these various material issues. And just quickly to end with this, that I know we talked a lot about, you know, reporting, driving this whole integrated reporting and connectivity, and I can tell you from experience that it may seem like that, and the truth is you do need to have people who are focused on the reporting, because those people within the business are the people that will help drive the business to focus on these issues that could potentially erode value. And so when we're talking to the capital markets and our investors, they also want to see that link. They also want to understand shareholder returns. They're investing in you because they need returns. They're also investing in you because they want to be related or connected to a company that is doing things responsibly. So ultimately, that link is there. And I think, you know, if you look at the our integrated report, at least the first phase of our integrated report on our website, you will see that we're giving examples of those links. And I think that's the help we're going to need from the IFRS and all these councils. And, you know, because I was sitting here thinking, my God, there's so many things to think about. Now there's management commentary, and we don't want to feel, you know, as though it's just an additional thing that we have to report on. We want to really make sure that there's that link. So hopefully conferences like this help the, you know, the conversation, the connection. And when outsiders then, you know, read these reports, they also feel as though, yes, there's some connectivity between the accountants, the sustainability officers, and of course, you know, the investors. Thank you,
I feel so glad to be moderating this panel, because you probably don't know, I'm half Nigerian, which is Eleanor. I'm also half German, which is Georg. But again, back to my hand thing being off. When Nigeria raised its hand in 2027 to say, we will adopt first, you know, many people were very skeptical. And so it's really great to hear right now, and I'm coming to you, Mark, a practitioner. So the fact that the country stepped up first, bought into this vision, implemented, created a roadmap from the top down as well, and then had early adopters. So right now you're in your voluntary adoption phase, and from what you're saying, you're already seeing real value. And the biggest doubt was, oh, but yes, adoption of S1 and S2 is never going to link to anything regarding integrated thinking or integrated reporting. And I was one of the founding members of the Nigeria Integrated Reporting Committee when I was Group Chief and Sustainability Officer and Governance Officer at Dangote, which is Africa's largest business. And we saw no traction in Nigeria. We're only seeing traction now. So that's, for me, a real gift. And the big question now is, Mark, she cited your company, KPMG, your other hat, as being part of the entities that advised her. How soon are we moving towards assurance? Because the fact is we will only get to real trust if we can start talking about the assurance of the data, which there is such a huge, you know, credibility gap on still.
Yeah, the question on how fast, obviously, is a question on how fast regulators want to move, right? We have a lot already, actually, in the world, a lot of voluntary assurance on sustainability reporting, more generally, but also on integrated reports, right? I have examples in the Netherlands where companies even get reasonable assurance on their integrated report. So, but how fast do we move, right? In Europe, we're now moving towards limited assurance mandatory from 2024 for the large ones, and then mandatory for the smaller ones, the larger unlisted companies the year after. For ISSB, obviously, that's a jurisdiction by jurisdiction decision. But I think that having assurance actually helps. As I said, I think in getting more discipline, and Veronica already set out, I think with S1 and S2 coming in, we're getting much more specificity, so these standards are extremely helpful to have the criteria against which we provide that assurance. Interesting, I mean, we were at a conference recently, I was at a conference, the International Corporate Governance Network with investors, and it's very clear that they want it, right? And if you talk about limited assurance and reasonable assurance, they struggle to understand what the difference is. And many may be here as well, but it is clear that they say in the end we want reasonable assurance over all of this information, i.e. we want that information at the same quality and at the same level of trust as financial reporting. And I think that just goes to show to the point that were made that investors really want this information and also want the trust. Maybe go back to what I said. I think it becoming mandatory over time is helpful. To George's Georg's point, right? I'm also involved a lot in Europe, and Emmanuel made the point. At the moment, it's going to be quite difficult if you think about integrated reporting under the IFRSs. It's a struggle. I have companies coming to me say, "How do I actually structure this? Because it's such a rigid format that we have to report on." And there, I would say, well, maybe we, and I think in other countries, Nigeria, Turkey, where maybe you don't do IFRSs, you may have more leeway already to continue with integrated reporting and incorporating S1, right? I think so that there is a difference there. So sometimes the regulation can also hinder a bit. But there I would go and quote you then, Ndidi, and say we have to trust the process. This is something that has to grow over time. Whether we all in Europe talk about it's a journey. So let's see. I think we will find our way there. And also I think in the European context, I mean, companies do want to actually tell their story, right? They don't want 200 pages of just data reported. No, they have to integrate the story. So I think we're finding ways of doing that, and I'm sure we will get there, but that may need to take some time. Maybe if I may, one last thing. I had a conversation over coffee with Tjeerd, my countryman here, and I think the fact that it's mandatory helps a lot, I think, in getting the discipline. The downside of it being mandatory is that it takes away some room for experimentation, and you see that companies, especially where it becomes mandatory, are getting a bit more afraid now, because they know there's an auditor looking at it, there's a regulator looking at it, and yeah, what does that do for liability and responsibility? So we have to be realistic. I think it will, take away some of the room for innovation that we had. So we have to think about how we bring that back.
Great, Mark. You actually gave me a good chance to go back to our opening keynote, which was really the call for convergence, the fact that we're on a shared journey. And Georg, that question comes to you, because you also have the responsibility of, as standard setter, taking into cognizance ESRS, but you're also very committed to the ISSP standards and to integrated reporting and integrated thinking. And Mark has just said it's not logical that, for example, in your part of the world, integrated reporting and integrated thinking is a part of what you're doing. But if we're all looking at this from a shared perspective and we're thinking about it from a convergence perspective and a timing perspective, then we will all get there, because a lot of this is voluntary application. We're going to learn from practice. We're going to learn from the learnings of different jurisdictions, and we will take that. I wanted to add to that question, though, and to your final comment before we open for questions. The tools. We've got a getting started guide. We've got a mapping tool for the integrated reporting and integrated thinking framework. We've got interoperability guidance. We've got jurisdictional adoption guidance on the S1, S2 side. How useful are these tools to you as a standard setter? And what else do we need to do to support this journey that incorporates everyone to really create that global baseline that we've been mandated to achieve?
I think these materials are particularly important, and in the European context, of course, the interoperability tables are of key importance. We simply from what we've done, so we've also tried to already initiate this debate on, in the end, getting, in particular now, S2 start compared to E1, and we had held a workshop already in autumn now with companies well attended and also involving key people from this discussion process, from the ISSB, your colleague Jenny Bofinger-Schuster or Kerstin Lopata, in the end, also giving some background, first of all. Second, in the end, people who were close to the discussion on interoperability, simply like drawing that picture. We know at the moment, certainly the bulk or the volume requires at the moment a lot of attention on the ESSs, but for in the end 2025, I think a lot are considering now simply like jumping on that simply because, and we always have to remember this, in the end, this is not part of our culture being operating in silos. It's rather simply like also there are companies, and this is the initial starting point for all the initiatives being reforming the German standard setup, being involved in the EFRAG debate, and what we had also as political positions from Germany in this debate at European level. It's about international consistency, and in the end, nobody wants, in the end, diverging things which are difficult to communicate, and also the investors would certainly not appreciate in the end having different, having to read this out of different documents.
Thank you so much, Georg. To my understanding, the clockwork here is off, but we still have 10 minutes. I do have a question. I was about to say, if you're not coming up on stage, I'm not going to give you the microphone. Please come.
Thank you. From an international accounting perspective, historically, sometimes there are still slight differences in reporting between countries or maybe even continents. Do you think we should expect the same destiny for sustainability in general? Are there still going to be slight differences, and then the companies will still be permanently challenged to actually do adjustments into their reporting standards when we're talking about global entities?
I'm happy to.
Eleanor looks like she's volunteering.
So I thought about, very good question, thank you. And I thought about this. For the sustainability standards and the requirements, I think it's a global issue already. And, for Nigeria, for instance, we signed up with the Paris Agreement. Now IFRS S1 and S2, there's also the sustainability development goals. So I think it may not be as detailed and as finite as the accounting ones, is my view. I think that what would be expected is that the countries and the companies are largely aligned with a lot of these global standards. I don't think the requirements on how you do the reporting is as detailed. I think it's mostly around what we've been talking about today, which is the integrated thinking about how your business is going to be sustainable. So the narrative that you put forward around that, building a sustainable business or ensuring that you're thinking about the SDG goals or the, what's in the Paris Agreement, I think is what is most important. Thank you.
Maybe my perspective, I think, well, first of all, when you think about sustainability reporting, right, it's new, and we start this now. So I think if you look at Europe, but also in a year's time, when ISSB standards are, I think, much more applied around the world, there will not be immediate comparability. I think there will be comparability over time because companies will be looking at each other. I think investors will be asking questions of companies. So that whole area of peer comparison and therefore convergence over time of information and comparability, that will have to grow, right? We saw the same with IFRS, by the way, that when IFRS just came about, it took a while before there was a certain level of convergence. So that is at the level of the companies. Then there is, I think, the more institutional question. I think with IFRS, I was a global IFRS leader for my firm for 20 years, and we always had as an absolute rule, you should not deviate from IFRS, otherwise you can't call it IFRS. And I think if we go and think about sustainability reporting now, we actually have to open our mind a bit and steer away from, being so strict on that, because I think we want to have a global baseline that builds on everything that the IFRS Foundation is doing in the ISSB. But we also have to see this builds on maybe policy incentives that countries have, and they may have different takes on different things. And so they have to allow for maybe some more top-ups, hopefully not too many carve-outs, but top-ups if they need it, if they want to go further, for example. So in that sense, I think, you know, you will not see full comparison, and there will still be, I think, some flavors in countries where they want to have something different. But I think overall, I mean, if we can achieve that global baseline, we're already making a huge amount of progress.
I think that's a perfect closing note, except that I can give each of you 30 seconds to say what homework do you want to take away, or do you want the room to take away on our journey towards building that global baseline? Go ahead.
I think in Turkey we are doing our homework. We took very significant and decisive steps. We can recommend all other countries and other organizations, which is important, but we have to feel the inside. You know, we have to increase the technical capacity of the staff in this process. We have to produce more guidance for the company, especially for connectivity, the interoperability issue is very important. And company expecting to hear more about, or answer about for their question. We just need more Q&A session, more tail guidance, which is very important actually. So we are doing in Turkey as the Integrated Reporting Association, our regulatory body also preparing some certified training program for the company.
So what I'm hearing from you is the word is capacity building.
Yeah.
You're doing it, and we need to do more of it. And thank you for that educational material on materiality that's coming out. Yes. Capacity building, very critical.
Yeah. So for me, Ndidi, thank you. It's really about the deeper meaning of value creation. Ensure that that ultimately is the goal, and do everything within your business to be able to answer that question.
That's brilliant, and that's directly derived from integrated thinking, integrated reporting, the legacy of that incredible body of work, which, and I'm so glad to say that actually the entire leadership of IASB and ISSB is here. It's been a while since I saw them all in the same place. The strongest advocate probably for integrated reporting on the IASB side, Nick. I won't talk about myself because my bosses are bigger advocates than I am. But that is so powerful, and then just listening to the conversations going on around the room. Homework.
Homework, yes. No, I already mentioned two things. Like, first of all, using opportunities wherever possible, and I think we do this currently with our national standard setting project on management report on incorporation by reference. Offer whatever possibility is there in order to strengthen the idea of integrated thinking and reporting. And second, of course, interoperability is going to be a topic for the next season, so we're going to continue a workshop format with companies in probably May after the first season.
So key principles, interoperability, of course, using the framework and integrated thinking, connectivity, I can imagine as well.
This is part of it.
For me, the homework is going to echo what Charles was saying, and also what Stefano set up this morning. We need a roadmap. We need to have a very clear picture on how this all going to fit together, and that needs to be offered to countries that are adopting this. So I think it's really, you know, making clear how that global baseline is going to work and how we're going to complete the ecosystem. And I think that is the biggest homework that we as a group here have. That would be mine.
Well, that's big homework. I hope you're going to take it and do it and share it.
I will be part of it with pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy lunch.
So, you know that's the time for lunch. Thanks so much for this fantastic panel. Now we have a lunch and the opportunity to have networking at ground floor, at first floor, and as well as to see again and again our exhibition of integrated reporting purpose. So have a good lunch. We come back here at 1:30 exactly to come back to a new panel. Have a good lunch.